Hey, happy Friday. How is everybody doing? I think we are live, so feel free to wave digitally or say hi below as you feel led. I apologize because I feel like I have dropped off a little bit. The last month has been a little wild, but in a good way, in that I interviewed for and got and started a new job. So I have been kind of distracted. It has kind of put me in a reading slump. I did finish our read along and our reread that we are here to discuss this evening, and we'll see how this goes. So hopefully we will have some more people filter in throughout, and I guess I can do some housekeeping until that point, but we might also need to swing back and touch on some of that stuff as well. I do have in the description box of this live donation links both to the Palestinian organization that Nicola has linked on her Instagram, as well as the Gaza evacuation book auction. So feel free to follow those links as well. I don't have donation capabilities, or I should say fundraiser capabilities, on my channel because I am too small. So I do have those linked below should you feel so led. And additionally, there was something else. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, I feel like I want more of us here for, but we can kind of start touching on. I I've been in a reading slump and, like kind of fathoming everything. I have been kind of out of the loop a little bit because I have been really valiantly trying to dodge spoilers. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been a little discouraged with the idea of all the spoilers. I don't know. I haven't really figured out exactly the perfect way to handle it yet. I have not been following spoilers, seeking out spoilers. I have been actively avoiding them as much as I can. So this is going to be a spoiler-free space, and I know that's going to be hard if you've come across something that you want to discuss within the framework of the book. So I apologize, but let's do our best to keep it as spoiler-free as possible for both me and anyone else that may want that. I can't promise we're all going to be perfect with it, and I'm not going to get mad necessarily, but I don't know. Weigh in if you have thoughts on that. I'm going to do my best. I've been kind of, trying to figure out how to handle talking about Bridgerton, knowing these spoilers are out, knowing that there are people who have seen the first episode, knowing there are people who have seen more than the first episode, and just how to approach that conversation approach the conversation within that framework. And I don't know that I have the perfect answer yet. I do know that my reactions to the show will not be out immediately. I will get them out as soon as I can, but they won't be immediate. I do hope that everyone will tune in to those as well. And I still hope that we can gather together to talk about the show together as well. But I don't anticipate doing that until I have dropped my reaction to the show, if that makes sense. Hello, good evening, good evening. Hi, Elise. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on. If you have thoughts about any or all of that, let me know. And I'm sure we will talk about it and sprinkle a lot of that housekeeping stuff back in, fold it back in as more people hop on. But I figured as we're kind of ramping up, now would be a good time to address a lot of that. Usual caveats, noise is what it's going to be. But if you notice it incredibly distracting, and let me know. I do have the window cracked just a little, but I live in an apartment in the city. It's going to be what it's going to be to a certain extent. So thank you for bearing with that. How is everyone else doing on this Friday, though, since I'm just kind of talking at you right now? We are less than 1 week from season 3. How wild is that? I know I said I've been pulling back. I have been pulling back, from a lot of the discourse online, not only from like the spoiler potential, but because it felt like it was getting a little angry there for a second. And I don't mind criticism and critique, but yeah, also there was the chance of stumbling on spoilers. But I have been seeing some of these promos that Bridgerton has been putting out like on their Instagram where it seems like the characters are talking to us directly. And I'm not gonna lie, I have not been watching all of those because because it is like they're breaking the fourth wall at us. And I don't know how I feel about that. I was notorious in college for not liking the fourth wall being broke in my face and used to ask my friends that were associated with whatever show was coming or opening, like where I should sit to avoid that as much as possible because, college likes to be experimental with their staging and that was highly possible. So I don't know. I get it. I think it's an interesting choice, but at the same time, all of them kind of teeter on the edge of like acting one monologues, not the portrayal or performance of them, but just how they exist. And so, not quite sure how I feel about those promos yet. I am so happy you hopped on YouTube too, Simone. I am happy you are here. Elise finished the book this week. Liked it more than I thought I would. That is great. We are obviously going to talk about the book. I promise. Yes, Grace. It's been crazy and so hard to avoid spoilers. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not gonna lie. I've gotten kind of down about it a little bit. Like I just want to enjoy this thing together, and I just don't know how best to go about that. So I guess at the end of the day, we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing over here, and I'm really grateful for all of you who are in on this conversation with me and have been here, will be here, are here in the after whatever. I am grateful that you are here and that we're just going to do what we're going to do. But we only have a few more days of dodging spoilers, so it'll be great. And in the interim, we can talk about Romancing Mister Bridgerton as well. Yeah, Simone says, I've been able to avoid most spoilers, luckily. I think I have too, to be honest. I'll just see like fleeting little moments and I'll just like turn my brain off. I recently deleted Twitter off my phone. Smart. But I did see a scene got leaked from the Netflix Brazil or something. I have a friend that we Instagram message back and forth about Bridgerton stuff. And I know there was one she sent me that I was like, I'm so sorry. This looks too spoilery. I might not watch this one. And she was like, fair. So that may have been what you were thinking or talking about, but I don't know because I too have been dodging, but we're almost there. We are almost there. Elise says, I haven't been spoiled, but I've been enjoying the cast interviews. Yes, me too. I haven't, again, been watching as many as I would have in the past. Or no, maybe that's not even true. I like cast interviews, but I can't say that I have caught every moment, but I really enjoy what I have been seeing. Any other general housekeeping things that anyone wants to discuss or what have you before we start diving in? I also have the Readalong storygraph linked in the description box too, and I can put that in the chat if we need for anyone that may not already be on the Readalong. I might pull it up as well. I don't want anyone to feel left out, and it's not going to be so much as like just rehashing the storygraph, but I will probably be pulling some discussion ideas and threads from there occasionally. But also, if you have points that you made on the storygraph that you want to reiterate in the chat, please feel free. Grace says, I've been spoiled on some stuff. I'm just hoping I don't happen upon part 2 spoilers. Yeah, and to my understanding, even people who have gotten screeners haven't seen the last 2 episodes, which I'm sure is very deliberate, but I was a little shocked that they sent out as much as they did on those screeners. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bummed at how much was going out because of the possibility for spoilers, the idea that like a lot of people were getting it early, so it wasn't as much of this like communal experience, but that's okay. That's okay. We're over it. We are having the communal experience together now. We will have the communal experience together in the future. We're going to have a grand old time. Or maybe there's people in the chat that have seen the spoilers and are laughing maniacally at me. I don't know, and I won't know until Thursday. Do not spoil me. Yes, so the story graph. And thank you so much for everyone who joined in on the conversation over there. Again, it is not obviously the be all end all of the conversation. We're going to talk about any and all that we want to talk about in relation to the book tonight, but I thought that was a lot of fun. And I'm sure we can continue that in other forms, whether with upcoming Bridgerton seasons or other books. I don't know. We'll have to see. So, what's everybody feeling? What direction do we want to take this? Any other general stuff we want to chat about? Do we want to just go ahead and dive into the book? You let me know. I did better at tabbing some stuff this time. I had intentions to write down like real discussion questions, like this was a talk back. And I think I have some of them kind of bookmarked for myself in the story graph. But again, with starting a new job, my mental energy kind of redirected a little bit. So it is an excuse. I am aware of that. But other than that, this is my third time reading this book, and it was an interesting experience because I reacted to a lot of things the same as I expected to or have in the past. Again, my experience personally between the first time I read this book and my reread of the book, or first reread of the book, was vastly different. Because when I first read this book, I was a teenager. Distraction. I really kind of saw myself in Penelope, or saw bits of Penelope in myself, whatever makes the most sense there. And I loved that idea, that wish fulfillment of the glow up and getting the guy who always overlooked you and all of that. In my reread, as I'm sure we will discuss more at length here tonight together, I had more issues with both the structure of the book, which you've heard me complain about before, I'm sure, and just Colin's anger. And I think we're probably going to end up spending a decent amount of time on Colin's anger because I know other people have called it out both in live streams and on the story graph. So M says, could you recap the Smith-Smythe? I think I'm doing the pronunciation order there wrong, right, but I apologize if it's wrong. And do you think it would be a shame if we didn't get it in the show? Listen, I am a Smith musicale evangelist. I love those god-awful musicals. I know that they exist. I have been wanting them in the show since season 1. I understand that we have to hold some of our cards a little closer. We have to have something to play with. But I do think it would be a shame if we didn't get it in this season. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up. Feel free to weigh in if you have strong opinions about the musicale. But it's such a big moment in the book. And I think the reflection of Penelope and Lady Danbury in the book, seeing themselves in at least one of the girls in the musicale. And just, I love, words are clearly difficult this evening. I apologize. We'll get back in the swing. We'll loosen up a little bit. And I'll try not to apologize so much and be more aware of that. Listen, call me out on it if you have to. Anyway, so the train of thought that I lost. I loved the idea of having the music of the Smythe Smith musicale underscore something. My initial vision of the trailer was like the first season trailer is I really wanted like that beautiful music to be like cut with the musicale music when we saw the kind of complication of things. And I think that there's a really interesting opportunity to do that in a moment in this season. I don't know if they'll take it, but I think the opportunity is there. And if anyone has further thoughts about that, please let me know. But yes, you know exactly the way to my heart. And it is with that musicale. We also had a really robust discussion over um, music for the season. I think, did I see in an interview that we basically confirmed True Colors is on the soundtrack? And I know I said no spoilers, but I think that was from an interview. So I wasn't counting it because it was like PR release. So I apologize if you consider that a spoiler and I am a hypocrite in this moment, but let me know what you think of that choice. I did see someone, I want to say on Twitter, ask what True Colors is, and then I felt a little old, but there are many songs I don't know, so I can't say anything there. Yeah, I know there were a lot of Taylor Swift songs on the story graph, which really begs the question, what song from the new album do you think is the most Polin? If you want to debate that below in the chat, wherever, feel free. I have not landed on anything. Okay. Grace says, I don't think they've confirmed it. I think Nicola and Luke just said that that's what they associate with Colin and Penelope this season. Okay, that makes sense. Yes. Meaning the song, or this in reference to the song. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I've seen lots of people wanting Yellow by Coldplay too, and I do really like that song, but in relation to Romance too, it was used in such a pivotal moment in Crazy Rich Asians. I will be interested to see if we can, if it, like, mentally associate it with that as well. I mean, it's a popular song, of course they can. So yeah, we'll see. Or I want them to have their own like song moment too, as well. But I love Coldplay, so I can't complain there. Okay, so if we talk about the book, this book gives us a little bit more opportunity to be a little nerdy about it in terms of, like I said, the structure, because we have the prologue, obviously, that really just kind of sets out the puppy love of Penelope, this idea that she's attracted to Colin because he has been kind to her and that she feels overlooked, really establishing her as a wallflower. Invisible String. Yep. Invisible String by Taylor Swift would be so fitting. That would be a good one. Absolutely. Which brings us back to this idea, too. I'm all over the place tonight. I know. I will get there, friends. I appreciate you being with me. So maybe I'll get there. The idea, because we start the prologue with the cut moment, or the moment on the step where Penelope hears Colin saying that he would never court her. And she says, I never asked you to. And so that's kind of what we've already seen mirrored in both the end of season 2 and the snippet we got, the first peek snippet we got of season 3. But the prologue here is really establishing this idea of this idealized love that we've heard Nicola and Luke both talk about in relation to the season. And we see that in the book as well, this idea that Penelope has this idea of Colin, and Colin also has this idea of Penelope, and they both have to re-examine who the other person actually is in order to actually fall in love and for it to be real love, which is beautiful. But at the same time, it feels like we're stalling a little bit for me in the structure because the first half of the book tries so hard to keep the secret of Lady Whistledown from us as readers. And that is so pivotal to both the plot of the book in terms of Lady Danbury's kind of bet and also the emotional journey of Penelope, because there is so much emotionally that she can't clue us into in the first half of the book. And for me as a reader, the first half of the book kind of stalled a little bit for me after a certain point. But at the same time, I do also understand why it exists in the way it does, because we do have these characters kind of rediscovering each other. They have the moments, or we have the moments of Colin really honestly seeing Penelope for the first time, even with that alluded to friendship. And we see Penelope having to acknowledge what her perception of Colin is, and that it has been kind of filtered through this lens of idealization because he has been nice to her. Listen, the bar is very low. But also, like, is he nice to her later? And we see that contrast and that shift. We'll get into it, especially if you want to drive this conversation anywhere. Feel free to drop in the chat, as I know you know, but just a reminder. Or if you're like Melody, you are going off on a tangent that makes no sense and or I do not care about, also drop it in the chat, because that is what we are here for, is the discussion. So I am going to just pull out this idea. Let me see if I can pull up. Give me 1 second here. I will pull up the story graph just so that you don't have to only hear my voice in relation to some of these points. Actually, is anyone in the story graph that has any issues with displaying some of these chats? I mean, there's nothing like incriminating or anything in here, and it is open into the public, but if you don't want your words to be projected, let me know and I can pull back out of this. So, because this is just me, I put an interesting note that the beginning makes sure to stress how affable Colin is, and we obviously see his anger later in the book. These are not mutually exclusive ideas, and the pressure of that presentation may be feeding into the anger. And without romanticizing it, because I don't love the way he interacts with Penelope in relation to his anger in some moments, it is of note that he lets her see this more vulnerable, flawed side of him as well, that the facade cracks around her. And we see this cracking on her side too. And that gets into kind of some of my rediscovery of the book in this reading personally, where that anger really jarred me in my last reread. Still don't love it. Still don't love it. But that carriage scene, I know we're going to talk about the carriage scene in more depth. We've had lots of moments as a fandom really excited about the carriage scene for a myriad of reasons. But the verbal sparring in that scene on this reread, I loved so much more than I thought I was going to, because I remembered that anger, and I remembered being angry at Colin, which I think is, you know, that projection of understanding where Penelope is coming from, but just wanting to smack him a little bit. So I guess I have my own anger to work out because he just wasn't getting it. And so I loved that the wall kind of drops in that moment and Penelope is giving just as good in those moments, and that we see them kind of really have to face the other person. So to get back to that uneven structure, we have to get there somehow, and it feels like it takes us a while to get there, but that early kind of like dancing around each other is important in that rediscovery. I just don't think it's active enough in the book, which I think is where some of these changes come in. And I also think it's of note because I actually sticky marted a passage on like page 9 of my edition. So early days, where Penelope, it's in Penelope's point of view. So it says, it wouldn't be fair to marry someone when she was still so desperately in love with Colin. And I think there is another quote potentially later where she's kind of engaging with that idea of what that would mean and if she could do it. And so the show is going to realize that mental exercise and make her choose and face that, because that's a more active, dramatic, interesting choice. And so I'm really compelled by that in terms or in context of going back to the book and seeing that that is more textually rooted than I remember. Granted, they're one-off lines that could be interpreted a number of ways, but that's how I interpreted them. Thank you, Lori, for the congrats on my new job, and I hope you are doing fine at work, and I am sorry you are working, though I do not know your time zone or your work schedule, but I hope it goes well, and I'm glad that you could be here with us in the interim. So I have babbled on a lot at you, which, I mean, it's kind of the nature of the thing. I have a camera in front of my face, I guess, but if you have any thoughts that spin off of those thoughts, or if you have any thoughts that have spun off because you were so distracted by how uninteresting those thoughts were, let me know. But that is kind of like what the framework, I think, of this discussion or like the book is this idea of both like the idealization, the rediscovering each other. They really have been emphasizing the friends to lovers angle, but then also having to see the other person as they are, stripping it down, which I think is why we have had so much more conversation about the intimacy in this season as well, and the references that there is going to be a lot more intimacy, which, yeah. But it playing into the narrative through line of things with that as well. I'm gonna stop sharing for now, as I find, so you're not just like scrolling through scrolling through with me. I do find it interesting because I didn't write down as many favorite Polin moments as I expected to. And that doesn't mean I don't have them. And I think a lot of us have similar moments that we will be talking about, but that is that. Before we jump into the full Romancing Mr. Bridgerton discussion, I did have this section for foreshadowing and discussion of other Bridgertons in relation to knowing that we are going to be setting up more plot lines in the show, but again, not knowing the full context of that setup because I have been avoiding spoilers. But in chapter 4, we talk about Francesca being widowed. Granted, obviously the timeline of this book is going to be much different than the show, but we do have mention of Francesca in this book more than I think we probably had prior to this book in this series. I don't remember how much of her we get in An Offer from a Gentleman, if at all. And then in chapter 23, so at the end of the book, Hyacinth makes a reference to feeling like she's involved in espionage when she has been tasked by Colin the way she is tasked in that scene to keep an eye on Penelope, which is, of course, and to be fair, I don't know that it meant to be in the writing, but we see it as a foreshadow of her book a little bit. Simone says, I remember being way more taken aback by Benedict's anger in his book, so maybe I was numb to the male anger when I got to Colin's book. Absolutely. I have a whole video raging about Benedict. Like, raging is a strong word, but also kind of raging about Benedict, book Benedict, just because he made me so angry. It's just like, and I get it, that conflict, that not understanding where the other person is coming from. At least with Collins, it made a little more sense. Well, did it? I don't know. I do like, again, that Penelope calls him on it, and he eventually kind of gets it in a way that Benedict might get it. He might not. But again, book Benedict is basically or show Benedict is basically book Colin. So that'll be interesting to see how that relates, and like what if Colin's journey is going to be similar in that he doesn't know where he fits and what his legacy is, or like what sets him apart, and that's going to be part of his journey. Though him in the book talking about how he like lives on the side of town where all the working people, like the middle class, live, but gosh forbid he have to actually work. He's not someone that works. He's not a tradesman, but he, is basically like a hipster, or like there's a word for that when you're just like cosplaying the working class. I'm like, this is a choice. In the same way that I was like much more clued into his writing, I think both the last two times I read it, I was like, is this really that good? Because the last time I read it, I remember thinking he was basically like the guy in your MFA. But at the same time, in this reread, there was something really endearing about how anxious he was in relation to his writing, though the anger in that first scene. And I think that's why when they mentioned the cut hand scene in February, I had kind of forgotten that it existed in that context, probably because I like blanked out some of that early anger, because they framed it as like this really romantic scene that we were all craving, which again, I haven't been on a lot of the online conversation spaces outside of like right here, but like that's a moment that's born of Colin's like anger, and his anger at Penelope being in a space that he doesn't know what to do with her in. Like she is in his family space, and he is invading his kind of like privacy and seeing around this facade that he's put up into the more private like interior, and that rattles him. And so that's kind of like the first that we see of that. But that anger is notable, and that like moment with the bandage and the romance presumably of that comes from that anger, and a lot of the book comes from that anger, and anger that doesn't always feel completely rooted, which at the same time I think is understandable in the sense that Colin is just deeply unhappy in a way that even as a very privileged young man, he is allowed to feel adrift and kind of not understand his purpose or the point, and that people don't get him. Like that is allowed, and I think that's understandable. And so the way we see that come out in his anger isn't always going to make sense, and the way that we see that directed at Penelope, particularly once he knows that she's Lady Whistledown, and there's that extra little element of fear there, and then of course the jealousy that we do discuss in the book, and I really do hope we discuss that in the show as well, because I think that's really powerful. That idea that he is jealous of her, I think means something. But not getting Penelope's kind of like internal journey with Whistledown, I think is a real shame. So, any other thoughts and feelings as those come up? But with that, let's kind of dig in to the beginning of the book. I also would like us all to remember that Penelope is like considering herself a spinster when she's in like her mid-20s at most in this book, and we're going to have that shift in the show as well, because she's going to have been on the marriage mark for 3 years. She is on the shelf for all intents and purposes of the narrative, but she is still very young. And so while we are not exploring that time jump, we are still exploring that idea of seeing someone after a period of time where there then is a change, because we've had these 2 seasons narratively, and yet we also have this idea of this extreme youth. Simone says, yes, I hope we get the jealousy in the show as well. It's an interesting dynamic for that time period especially. Yes. Like that idea that she is out achieving him in a lot of ways, and like what that means, and that paints her in a completely different light than he is used to considering her, and how that kind of like shakes up his world. I don't know what this question is asking. I apologize. So, if it's in relation to listening to the audiobook, no. If it's in relation to seeing a spoiler, also no. If it's in relation to something else, I don't know. Yes, I've done some of them on audio, and I think Elise, did you do this one on audio? But I did my discarded old library copy. If anyone else did a particular format that you enjoyed, let us know. Welcome, Catherine. We're almost here indeed. Ashley is here as well. Got a good crew here. As usual, we have started, we've been chatting, we've been vamping, because we do have a few more people here than when I started. At Last by Etta James. Yes, that's a great one. That's a great one. That would be so good too, like a sultriness. I feel like there's a sultriness this season. Let me know if you agree with that. Again, I haven't seen, although actually I did have a thought. Bitterroot says the audio is good. I did the audio. That's great. I feel like I started the audio of The Duke and I way back when I was trying to reread that for the first season, and I ended up finishing it in print. I went like back and forth, but I remember I don't think I was back in my swing with romance audiobooks yet then. In relation to that dream sequence, or what at last meeting we had determined was a dream sequence, and again, if we have changed that assessment since then, based on spoilers, I do not know, and we will not be discussing that, but it talks about her. She makes a reference to the Windswept Moors. Yeah, it says, better to save the Windswept Moor introductions for people who might actually have a future together. So the fact that they're kind of invoking that like foggy, windswept moor nature in that dream sequence potentially is interesting. Yeah, Catherine, I've been doing shelf or ebooks of the other books. I just had this from like a dime sale at the library back in like 2008 or something. So the shelf space problem is real. It is real. Grace doesn't love Rosalind Landry as a narrator, but that's personal preference. That's fair. Did she do Duke and I as well? I'd have to check my Libro.fm. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I had that with a Joanna Shupe, and I'm still devastated to this day. Tangent. But my favorite Joanna Shupe, at least what I believe is my favorite Joanna Shupe, which one is it? It has a deaf hero. I do remember that. It is my favorite Joanna Shupe, and I can't remember it, so that's not saying much, is it? But I bought the audiobook on Libro.fm when it was on sale and was so excited, and I could not get connected to the narrator. I don't think I've listened to it. I was so excited. A Notorious Vow is the book, which you should read if you like, well, I mean, if you like romance, you're here. Probably. But it's Joanna Shupe does, if you're unaware, like Gilded Age romance, but I do think that one has an heiress potentially. It doesn't matter. Check it out if interested. So, yes. I would have loved, as much as like, sure, redo the covers. They're always going to redo the covers. But Adjoa does the romance narration for the Get a Life Chloe Brown series, the Brown Sisters series, and I love the audiobooks of those books. I love the books, period, but I love the audiobooks of those books as well. And like, she could have you could have just paid her a lot of money to also redo the audiobooks. And I personally would have loved it, though maybe there would have been some disconnect there in terms of readers not being able to disconnect her from Lady Danbury now. I don't know. So, anyway, what a pleasant side quest there. Um, do, do, do. So we talked about last time, maybe? No, don't be sorry you're late, KB. Thank you for being here. Yeah. You can consume and join in however you so desire. You can also just stay here and catch it later because I don't know that I talk about anything too revolutionary at the beginning. I think I'm just starting to find my words. Don't worry about typos, Ashley. But I feel you. But you have trouble with audiobooks personally. I go through waves. Romance, I do the best in terms of fiction on audio, but I'm most likely to be able to like actually focus on nonfiction in audio. And if I have to like full factory reset into getting back into audio, I generally do humorous nonfiction. But yeah, I agree. Like something about getting read a story makes you sleepy, which isn't great in the sense that as a theater person, and more specifically a dramaturg and literary manager, which I haven't like practiced since before 2020. So I don't know how much longer I can continue to say that, but play reading sometimes it can be hard. I had to train myself to be able to focus in that setting. So, where was I mentally? Not here for most of the night, to be completely honest. I mean, I'm here with you, but am I? We did talk about, I think it's smart that narratively we are transferring the boredom of the ton in the book onto the queen. And I saw a tweet today. I should have bookmarked it so I could share the tweeter. And honestly, I shouldn't have even been on Twitter at all. But kind of, was it a tweet? Was it on? It doesn't matter. But this idea of this kind of story, Polin needing to be here narratively, because we're kind of like wrapping up this idea of being in society in the ton. And the stories after this are going to kind of push us outside the bounds of society with a capital S. And so it kind of coming full circle. And that means that in that context, one, we need to wrap up Whistledown, but two, the boredom makes sense there. And I thought that was a really smart point. And if anyone knows who raised it, I'm so sorry that I'm not crediting you. Twitter is a zombie. I just have been on it for so long, and it's like I'm not getting anything worthwhile from it anymore. Like why? And it's all like rage baiting now to get money. That's all it is. Anyway. But in terms of the narrative structure, I found that very interesting. And I think that shows a lot more. No, I'm not going to keep ragging on the structure of this book, especially because I do think that the first half of this book was doing a lot more narrative legwork than I was giving it credit for. But I also think it wasn't doing enough narrative legwork. Like, I don't think it was the best use of space. It felt like we were kind of spinning our wheels a little bit. And I think we could have consolidated a lot of that, like Penelope and Colin kind of like dancing around each other, or more specifically, Colin kind of dancing around Penelope and kind of like rediscovering her and kind of like reframing her. exactly what I want, but is what I want at the same time. Oh, here's a very important piece that nobody responded to in the story graph. And so I am going to force it upon all of you now. You are welcome. There is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference in this book, and I need to talk about it because I remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy being incredibly popular when I was young. When this came out, I read it in middle school, which I think is like prime time to read that book. Like the humor hits in middle school. Also, the movie came out around that time for me. But notably, the movie had not come out yet when this book was published because this was published in 2002 and the movie didn't come out until 2005 to my quick little Google searches weeks ago, which means that it was also enough of a cultural presence still in book form to get the reference because it can't be an accident, right? So the quote is, Lady Danbury shushed him with a wave of her hand. How many great mysteries are there in life, really? No one answered, so Colin guessed 42. Like, it has to be, right? There's no way. You don't just throw out 42 willy-nilly anymore, right? Yes. Yes, Catherine. I know. This puts us in the conversation at Colin's mom's ball, birthday ball, where we have both the infamous Eclair scene, which I feel like, well, no, because I haven't been following spoilers, so I guess I wouldn't know if we're getting. I would love if we got. I don't know that we will, but at the same time, they've really talked up the comedy of this season and that it's a rom-com. So maybe we will. Maybe we'll get that. Like the quartet has infinite comedic potential there if we're framing it that way in our hopes and dreams. I don't know. Yes, she also references The Sound of Music, which I love. And I love Hyacinth hoping we get the glue scene. Yes. Yes. Especially because, like, that's a great Easter egg for her season, especially if they keep the espionage angle. And I think that they will play up the espionage kind of caper-ness of her book in her season because it'll be so much different than what we've got before by then. Ashley says, I had a friend who collected anything with the number 42 on it. That's hilarious. Okay. Lori says, I'm in Australia, so it's Saturday morning. So we're less concerned about your work schedule now. Good. Anyway, okay, so that ball and the conversation in that ball with the ton. And Catherine made a great point about this in the story graph about just how rude they are to just ignore her. And I was thinking about it more as I sat with that comment and that scene. And it's either, actually, how did I respond to that exactly? Actually, I think it's in chapters 3 and 4. Okay, so they make a couple of people make note to comment, oh, Penelope, I didn't see you there, something along those lines. And if that's not just like bad dialogue, which I don't think it is, because Quinn has always been known in romance circles for her quippy, sharp dialogue. Like that's kind of her hallmark and part of the reason that this series translates or makes sense on screen so much. And so if that's not just like a kind of clunky piece of dialogue, that means that these people are consciously making a point to tell Penelope, giving the cut indirect and saying, oh, you weren't even worthy of my notice. I didn't notice you there, but very backhandedly. And so those are the moments that she has been putting up with for many more years in the book than she will have been in the show, but still too many in the show. And these are the moments that Colin is just now picking up on because he's always been the golden boy. And on some level, it should have clicked. And she calls him out on that too. She's like, you were always dancing with me. You and your brothers were always dancing with me because you felt bad for me. But he just had never like fully understood what that means for her. I wonder if Anthony and Kate are going to have baby Ned at the end of the season. Maybe. Maybe. Again, I don't think anyone's seen the end of the season. I have been avoiding avoiding those spoilers. Yes. Yes, like the bully nature of society at this point. And so I'll be interested to see if that's explored. I also think in retrospect, in the book, Lady Danbury talks about wanting to see Penelope settled, or like wanting to see one more person settled because she sees so much of herself in Penelope. And in the trailer, we have that moment of her kind of presenting Debling to her. It is Debling, right? And so that strikes a similar chord. So I think for those of us who've been hopeful for that connection between Penelope and Danbury in the season, I think that is a good indicator that maybe we will see some of that realized. Yeah, no wonder. No wonder Penelope is Lady Whistledown. But and also like the impetus of a teen girl doing that and like starting that, but then also like the business like savvy of that. Yeah, all of it. Yeah, talk trash and take their money. I wonder if the money part. Well, no, the money part was already acknowledged in season 2, so it will definitely be grappled with in season 3. I mean, I guess anything could or could not happen, but I am willing to bet that we will see that come into play. I did have a laugh. I know Nigel in the book is much, much different than Nigel in the show. If you are joining us and have not read the books, one, perfectly fine. You are allowed to consume this however you desire, and I'm happy you are here. But two, in the books, Nigel's kind of just a bumbling fool. He is not evil. I wanted to say evil is a strong word, but it's not. I don't think it is. And so he marries one of Penelope's sisters, and I honestly confuse their names. I'm not going to lie to you. So I don't remember which one. But there's like a joke that, of course, he wasn't Whistledown because he was like, oh, well, I'm not Whistledown. And everyone's like, no one was considering you. But that made me think of someone may have read it, and I know I've done a video about it in the past, but The Secret History of the Pink Carnation series that came out in the mid 2000s. So there may have been some overlap in that series. I don't think there was overlap yet. Maybe there was. But that is kind of like a Scarlet Pimpernel-esque series. And so this also could have been like a call out to like a Scarlet Pimpernel-esque type. And then I was just sad because I wanted a Scarlet Pimpernel-esque moment. But just the idea that like the bumbling like dandy being like the secret identity. So while it was like a kind of throwaway moment, it was also, I think, also a reference to Scarlet Pimpernel. Maybe I'm going too far into that. Yes, Ashley says, I'm curious to see how they will adapt the Danbury Penelope friendship as well. Honestly, at this point, any interaction at all will be amazing to see. They have barely shared the screen. That's true. That's true. They haven't had a whole lot. And so it may be that moment of that recognition. And maybe it's, Penelope taking control of something for herself and Danbury seeing that spark. There's potential there. Yeah. Yeah. Nigel in the show was. Yes, the Danbury relationship, Ashley, their friendship in the book is so sweet and genuinely based on respect for one another. Absolutely. And I love that idea of cross generational friendship and just this idea of women seeing the strength in each other and supporting each other. I think there's a lot of really great stuff there. That idea of kind of like passing things on to the next generation. And I don't know, there's just a lot there. Bitterroot says, I need to point out that in the trailer, the fan scene is great. You can see that Penn is Portia's daughter. Yes. And I do love, again, we're seeing a lot of these kind of like broader comedic moments that are translating to the season and the way they're talking about the season, or at least what I've seen so far in the trailer. But we are also seeing those broader comedic moments in a way from the book that I just didn't remember, I don't think. The Eclair scene I obviously remembered because who could forget? That's just funny. I like it. I hope we get it on some level. But we have those like broader moments, but they're still also still textually rooted because we have those, or the prologue, Penelope talks about how she just doesn't know how to talk to people. And so as much as the secondhand embarrassment is strong in her like attempting to flirt scene, and like honestly, same Penelope, I get it. There is a lot of textual support there still, even if it feels different. If that makes sense? If you're with me? Hello from Houston. Hello back from Chicago. And from the various other places other people are joining in from. I know we've got someone from Australia, and I'm geographically challenged. So if you have told me where you're tuning in from before, I have forgotten, and I apologize. Catherine says, I'm not going to count this as a spoiler. I'm going to count this as speculation because it sounds like speculation. Some people are thinking that Eloise's friendship with Cressida will lead to Sophie's introduction. I don't think I vocally emphasized the quotes around friendship, but I think that that would be a possibility. I have a lot of, I'm very intrigued to see what they're doing there. I know we talked in the past about the real dramatic potential there, which I think is definitely a part of it. But I think that they're up to something else, and I don't know exactly what because I have been too afraid of spoilers. I wonder why Cressida goes out of her way to bully Penelope in the show. Yes. I do think that they are attempting potentially to explain this more. In the books, Cressida is just a bully. And on one hand, there is something satisfying about seeing a bully brought down. And sometimes a bully is just a bully. But narratively, I understand why they are playing with it. And it does feel like a very 2000s kind of portrayal and idea. But again, there's that satisfaction. And two, because I really like that they emphasize in the book that Cressida is smart. She's just mean. And so even Colin is like, yeah, she's smart, but I don't like her. Like there I think is a lot of nuance there that I missed before in that. Catherine, I agree. I just need Eloise to learn it's not always about her. And I think that that is her journey. I have struggled with that as well. We have seen a lot of kind of like not like other girls kind of energy from her. And I think that's just part of the journey. And I think a lot of us have been through a journey that is similar. And we have this whole arc that these characters have to go on. We can't just like plop them out of the background into their book in the same way. I mean, we could, but it's a different thing. And I think we're seeing a lot of the growing pains of this format this season in this discourse that I have been avoiding as hard as I possibly can, because we are seeing season 2 was the first test of it, right? We succeeded, but now we have to do it again, and do it again when we have this relationship that's even more popular. That's personal bias too, than the relationship in season 1. So it's a difficult balance. I don't remember what was getting me there. Oh, just the arc of things. So it's that balance of, yes, switching out the leads and who is leading the season, but also having the arc for the other characters so we are connected to them in some way. We're going to know Francesca better than we ever knew Francesca ever. I already know from the weird fourth wall breaking ads on the Bridgerton Instagram Francesca better than I knew her going into her book. Hello from California for Elise. Ashley says, I have my theories on why Cressida acts that way towards Penelope, but I believe it is a mix of bullying to gain a sense of control. I agree. And when she sees that Penn is much stronger than she thought, it angers her and causes her to lash out more out of a mix of jealousy and hurt, perhaps. Most bullying behaviors are multifaceted and multi-layered. Absolutely. You are always coming in with a strong analysis. Everyone in the chat is always coming in with a strong analysis. But I appreciate everyone's gold star thoughts. So no, I think that is the case. And I think we see that playing out in the book a little bit more, especially in the confrontation between Penelope and Cressida, and seeing them on essentially even footing for the first time, because we had not seen that in the books prior. And so I think we are setting ourselves up in some ways for that face off in the show as well, whatever that looks like. It may be a completely different tenor, but I think we are still headed toward something. Hopefully Eloise will listen this season, and Penelope needs to set her straight. Also, Eloise comes from a very privileged position and she can't see outside her realm of reality. Yes, I agree. I do know I think Louise had the point of giving Eloise some grace. And I agree on all points, I think. I think that we do need to extend Eloise some grace, but I think she also needs to be given a little sense of a reality check. Like, she doesn't really know. And to be fair, she has a reason to be hurt, but she also doesn't have the full picture. Many of us don't when we've been hurt. But there's a lot going on there, and she doesn't really, I think this season she's really going to see, and I think it's going to mirror Colin's realizations as well, because Colin hasn't really seen. I think we see that very evidently in just the first little teaser scene we got in February, where he is so dosh gone proud of himself, and he thinks he's going to, come in and have his little moment with his friend, and it's not that. And he's learning that this reality is completely different. And that is part of what I love most about the book, and what really plays into what I love about the carriage scene so much, especially on this read. And thinking about that scene and how excited we've been for that scene in context of the energy that exists in that scene in the book, I'm excited. I love a hate to love. This is not like a hate to love or an enemies to lovers, but it's got the same emotions because it's that like overspilling of something. Yes, and Will and Alice have a title and a new house. So we're going to have a lot more going on with Will and Alice. I really hope Will is someone's friend. One of the Bridgerton brothers needs him as a friend. We need an outside perspective to call them on their Bridgerton brother, like who has the brain cell right now. I feel like Anthony is going to be sharing it more of the time because he's married and happy and settled. I don't know, but I feel like will kind of temper that a little bit, but I don't know what's going on there. I'm not mad about it because I really like those actors, and we haven't gotten to see a whole lot or enough of them, I don't think. But at the same time, like, how much is it going to pull from the main storyline? How long are these episodes? Do we know? I agree, Ashley. We all see things in such different ways, which is why these discussions are so great. I absolutely agree. And I love that we can see the differing viewpoints as well. And kind of look at it and just examine it from different points of view, because it's a book, it's a TV show. I'm gonna go back up here, but I saw Bitter Root mention Felicity, who I will miss. I will miss. I hope they merge Felicity's character with Penn's unmarried sister, because then they can show the family scene at the end in which we see how Penn's family thinks of her. Yes. Also, that will get that actress more to do. So I think the odds of that are decent. Have a little bit of a redemption arc there potentially in terms of like those filial bonds, the whole family kind of seeing her is not the word I want. That doesn't sound particularly insightful, but it's what's up here right now. So yes, we'll talk about the drawing room scene, but it was just as good. It was just as good. Also, like, will we get that same order, carriage to drawing room? And if we do, there has to be an episode break in there somewhere, right? Like, they're not gonna give us both at once. They're not that nice, right? They're gonna do something tricky there. Yeah, actually, yes. Based on some of the things Claudia has said about Eloise's journey this season, I feel like we are all about to be more annoyed by her than ever. I think she will resist until the last minute. I agree. One, I think I don't remember her exact wording in the February panel, but I think that that was really what was setting that up. And I think that's important. And I'm sad that that's so important, because with a lot of this kind of like railing fandomness that I've been avoiding, I want to say like the plague, but people don't avoid things like the plague. So it doesn't really work, does it? But I hate that the actors feel like they could be attacked for character decisions. And I hate that character decisions can be attacked without considering the full narrative arc, or that people are allowed to make mistakes. And that exploring those mistakes narratively is a really interesting realm because it allows us to kind of like mentally play a lot of this out when maybe we would not want to make those same mistakes in our own lives, or maybe we have and we want to see some validation there or some recognition. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Sorry for, I'm on my little soapbox. It's not very stable though, so I'm gonna get off. Um, but yes, because I think that's going to set her up in a very interesting position to be humbled come her season, and not like humbled in like a, but like it's going to create a narrative shift. It's dramatic action. It's something that upsets her balance because she goes into her book thinking she knows, and she does not know. And we're kind of entering the same realm. Ashley also says, my question is how much will Eloise interfere with Colin and Penn's relationship in the show? Good question. I think this might be a good time to talk about Eloise and Penn in the book because we obviously know. Oh, everyone has such good thoughts. You have so many good thoughts in the chat and I'm missing them. That's okay. This is great. I love it. Let's talk about Eloise and Penn a little bit more. And if I miss like a point that you made that I trust is genius, slip it back in the chat and we can go back. Yes. So, oh yeah, okay, sorry. Before we talk about that, Ashley, I agree. Okay, so I tried to avoid spoilers, but honestly, I'm too far into my obsession with this right now. I bought t-shirts, splurged on some Bath and Body Works candles and soaps I shouldn't have, but I did. I feel you. I had the moment today. We all saw the t-shirt that got posted on Instagram, right? I had a moment where it's like, do I need to buy this t-shirt? Do I need to do review videos in this t-shirt? I don't think I would get it by the drop of part 1, but I think I could get it potentially by the drop of part 2. I think that might be going too far. I think that might be too far. But it's like if Polin had a wolf shirt, and I feel like maybe I should own it. Weigh in below. Let's talk about Penelope and Eloise in the book versus, well, we know what the show is kind of sitting at, but, and I know we've talked a lot about the frustration of the book to show translation of that discord. Discord is dramatically interesting, unfortunately. And I think it's getting at some of those tensions in female friendships that are really important and I love seeing explored in depth because I think we often really discredit how important friendships are in general, but also female friendships for women of a certain age, whether it be very young or even older, because there's this assumption that the friendships shouldn't be the main focus of your life. And maybe it's because for me in my life right now, my friendships really are my center. So seeing this, I don't know where that was going. But in the book, I appreciated that there was never that strife, but at the same time, I never felt fully satisfied with the reveal of Lady Whistledown to Eloise because it felt too easy. And I understand that acceptance. I like that immediate acceptance and that kind of like deep knowing of a friend. But I think that also those kind of rough spots are inevitable. And I think we see this in the book in a way that I also really appreciated, because we see Penelope's partnering with Colin upsetting Eloise's world. And I think we're going to see that much more actively in the show. But it touches on something that I think we don't really talk about a whole lot. I feel like I'm getting warm. Irrelevant. In that when you are single, as a single person, I can only speak to my experience, but you have these deep friendships that are really the center. And when someone enters a serious partnership, whether that be, a long-term relationship, a marriage, what have you, suddenly you find yourself not at the center of that person's world anymore, which makes sense. But it's still a dramatic shift in and recalibration of that relationship. And I can't say that in my own life I've always navigated that correctly. I know that I have sometimes pulled away, not maliciously, but and I think there's an articulation of those feelings in this book that I think is really sweet and I love to see acknowledged. Yeah. My brain just started to do the little spinning wheel of death. Ashley says, Eloise was barely there in the book for me, but it felt really familiar and how they were slowly growing apart to where they would be able to move on to married life. Yes. I think that is part of what I'm exploring there, especially to the point of her slipping away at the end, her not even making it to the end of the book. Which we'll see if that happens. Because I feel like, I don't know, because I haven't seen spoilers, but I feel like Benedict is next still. But at the same time, we swoop so easily from romancing to Sir Philip in the books. Also, I apologize if I Bitterroot says, there is a t-shirt. I'm not on Instagram. Where can I get one? I already bought the collector's edition. It's a Netflix t-shirt. Let me see if I can find it. So it's from their store. I feel like it's just the FOMO. Right now. Oh, they didn't post it to the grid. I don't know the Netflix store's handle on Instagram. It's not Netflix store. I can tell you that much now. I will find it. Or if somebody else finds it and can put it in the chat, we will investigate. Yes, I think that's a good point as well, Ashley. Viewing this from a modern perspective, it is easy to expect a certain amount of closeness in friendships because of how easy it is to communicate nowadays. Absolutely. It was much easier to live a life and write letters to stay connected, but not to be expected to stay in touch every day. There was room and allowance for living separate lives and having that space. Okay, I looked it up, not getting it. That is probably what I needed to be told, because I don't know that I would really, it would be a sleepy shirt, and I don't know that I really need that. Yeah, I have also grown apart from friends because of life milestones, so it feels true to life. Yeah. And I think presenting that, it makes sense in the book where it's coming in their stage of life, but it also makes sense in the show in them growing up, and that being kind of one of the first milestones of their growing up is that shift. Oh, I didn't mean to highlight that one, but yes. Also, I think that's just fandom. I'm not attacking people, but I think that's fandoms can get a little much sometimes. Boop, boop, boop. I'm just trying to scroll back up, and I'm not going to force you to sit through me reading, hopefully. I just don't want to miss people's excellent points. In the interim, enjoy that low, long siren. Yes, Catherine. In the book, Colin thinks Eloise is Lady Whistledown, and she has to tell him no. Him and Penn get engaged. Eloise is happy for them, but she's like, I don't want to be left behind. Runs off to have a blind date. Yes. You're always good with the jokey distillations there. Coming through. But also, yes, like the focus on believing Eloise is Lady Whistledown. I'll see how much that carries over. I don't think that's gonna really carry over after season 2, but who knows? The shirt is not spicy. It says Polin and then Bridgerton. I think there's a Colin Bridgerton shirt too, and it just got like lots of pictures of like Penelope and Colin on it, and it looks like it wants to be a wolf shirt to me. This is gonna bug me. Let me see if I can find. I'm playing into their. All right, copying the link and pasting the link. I'm airdropping myself the link. It's a whole process. All right, let me. You're gonna judge me so hard. That's an ad. That's the shirt. Oh, nope, we don't want that. We want that. Like, it looks like something that was airbrushed in the mall the year this book came out. A little bit, I think. Oh no, I'm sorry, bub. Just have to let you know my dog heard the siren in the back and is now grumbling because she's trying to figure out where it came from. Listen, if I show up in the shirt, we'll see. We'll see. Is it the best use of my money? Probably not. Is it the worst use of my money? Also not. I don't remember. Maybe they're trying to push the merch more because I remember someone saying at one point, like, oh, Netflix has like a whole merch store for its shows and then they never talk about it. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. So that is the shirt that distracted my thoughts. I can, you know what? Even though it's a little warm, I'm going to close. I don't know how loud. Yes, there are worse things to spend money on, I would say. Okay, where were we? Yes, it reminds me of a WWE shirt. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of because it feels very like middle school to me. Where were we? Okay, so we talked about Eloise and Penelope. We last narratively were talking about the Violet Bridgerton ball, the birthday ball that they tricked her into by threatening to reveal her age, which shows that they are great children because they can remember her age. And then we have the challenge. Although I thought I was sure I have probably talked on streams or videos like the challenge came at the Smith Smythe quartet. And it did not. I don't think. Correct me if I'm already misremembering again. That's the thing is like I finished this book. I felt so good. I have tabs. I've read this minimum 3 times. I don't know exactly how many. And then I'll get done and I'll be like, wait, what? Oh, also, I do want to make a mental note as well as we get there that the Lady Whistledown, like, chapter introductions stop on chapter 11, which is right after Cressida tries to claim to be Lady Whistledown, which I think is very interesting narratively because we never see them again. They're just gone. Colin is going to get his toddler niece's Charlotte another doll to add to her collection. This little girl was trained by Hyacinth. Hyacinth is great in this book too, if I remember. Like, not just the glue scene, but I feel like she has some other zingers that I'm not recalling in this moment. But we are definitely watching her grow up over the course of the books. And she is a lot of fun, obviously, in Benedict's book as well, which we will get to experience. And then I think that'll be even better because she will be a little older even then. So we'll get to see her relationship with Sophie. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're still with Polin. Which, let me... Okay, I wrote myself a long note because I'm really good at writing myself long notes or just writing long notes in general. Let me see if I can parse this. Or let me share the screen for a bit and let's go back to the story graph. Again, if you weren't here earlier, if you are in the story graph and have any qualms with projecting what's in here on a live, let me know. Again, it is a public story graph, and there's nothing like incriminating in here, but I want to respect your boundaries. If you have them, feel free to let me know. No worries. So let me see if this was worth projecting. Okay, yes. Okay. This was the section I was looking for earlier when I talked about this idea of Penelope having to face this hypothetical. This is the hypothetical. Okay, so she told herself that she wouldn't have accepted in any case since her heart belonged to Colin. But was that really the truth, or was she just trying to make herself feel better for having been such a resounding failure on the marriage mart? If someone asked her to marry him tomorrow, someone perfectly kind and acceptable, whom she might never love, but would in all probability like very well, would she say yes? And I think this became the thesis of the season. I think it is about facing this and then facing each other as we actually are in the mirror. I also feel like, and correct me if your interpretation of the reading was a little different because I didn't write it down enough, but I felt like there were references to this idea of darkness and light in the book that we're also seeing in the titling of the episodes for obvious reasons. So, thoughts, opinions, quips. Yes. Catherine says, Debling is offering security and freedom since he's going to travel and needs a wife to oversee his estate. I had missed that piece of it because I haven't been as clued in. Got very distracted by the job wrench this last month in the Bridgerton lead up. I'm not going to lie. Yes. Ashley says, I agree 100% that this is where they decided to bring Debling into this season. We need to see Penelope actually have the possibility of not true love, but a comfortable life, and for her to have to, and you're still typing, but I assume you mean make that choice. I'm putting words in your mouth. Correct me if those are not the words you would like in your mouth. Oh, here we go. Decide what she truly wants, and by extension, Colin, come to terms with his feelings for her. Yes. And at the same time, recognize that what she has wanted for so long is an illusion to some extent. It is a dream. It will be interesting to see how these dream sequences play out. If we're playing on the disillusionment of the dream, the plaguing of the dream for certain parties. And I just think that is going to be really interesting and add depth for Penelope and Colin. I know there has been some debate about the Colin groveling angle of things, and I always was quipping about that when I was talking about it. I never really cared that serious, but what is important to me is seeing that evolution and that realization of him seeing Penelope's reality. And I think we're going to be seeing them both see the other's reality, but it's very important for me that Colin see Penelope's reality just because. And I think that we see that really well again in the carriage scene and the way those jabs just fly. Yeah. The Colin she put on a pedestal doesn't really exist. Something anyone with long-term unrequited love has to come to terms with, yes. And as someone who has had many an unrequited crush in my time, I usually come to the realization years down the road of like, oh, thank God that was unrequited. Yeah, what was that about? You know? So I think that we have a little bit of that reckoning here and choosing love amidst the imperfections and the jealousy and the fear from both sides and seeing that vulnerability. But again, the importance of each of them showing vulnerability to the other and how important that is. Oh, good night, Bitterroot. Yes. Yes, I would love to continue to do read-alongs and like book clubby type things. Let me know. We'll feel free to like chime in. We'll work on figuring something out. Absolutely. If that's something someone or people are interested in. But good night. Thanks for popping in. Oh shoot. Okay, we're still doing good. If everyone else is still good. I just didn't realize what time it was. Yes, absolutely. Colin has put Penelope on a pedestal too. And so I think the duality of that and the like symmetry of that, I should say, is really important and it puts them a little bit on equal footing in some ways because he has this idea of who his friend is, of who Penelope is, and he doesn't see her existing in her own world. He sees her as an extension of his and in very specific places in his. So that's why it's so interesting, like when she is in the family drawing room when he doesn't expect her to be because he is unaware of how entrenched in his family she is and him having to reframe her outside of that or inside of that context and realizing that that positions her outside of his control or like how he thinks of her and then also like him entering her space in the drawing room and having to kind of recalibrate there as well. Yeah, they truly see each other and fall in love with their true flawed but good selves and become each other's editors. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I had a better time with the anger this go around. I still didn't love it. Do not get me wrong. And I didn't like the physicality of it. I think that there was a lot more physicality just at this time in romances too. I think we see this play out for all the Bridgerton brothers who are not, well, they're kind of over. Some of them, Antony is a little bit more overbearing than others, but they're not necessarily presented as that archetype of a hero. And so I try to consider that. I don't love like the moments where it talks about how tightly he is holding onto her arm, especially at, oh my gosh, the engagement ball. Guys, friends, the engagement ball. It's gonna be so hard because it should be such this beautiful moment of triumph. Like it's gonna hurt so bad. What song is gonna be there? Also, I did pause it earlier because in the storygraph we had lots of Taylor Swift songs proposed. If anyone has strong feelings about which song off the new album fits Polin the most, feel free to leave that below because I personally am interested and I can ask the questions. But the ball. I know it talks about how tight he holds her then. I know it talks about how tight he's holding her, I think, after the church. I think. I don't love those moments, but I do love him kind of seeing that breakdown of his, again, facade, and then also her getting to break down her facade as well. So that goes back to like the uneven structure a little bit with like the breakdown of the facades. But as readers, we've had this facade. In the show, we're not going to have any facades. How many more times can I say facade is the question. But I feel like we pack so much into the end of this book, and there's so much wasted space that isn't completely wasted, but could have been better utilized at the front half of this book. Because chapter 11 is really, that's where we lose Lady Whistledown as an intro. That's where Cressida is like, it was me all along. He he he. That's my Cressida impression. You're welcome. So that's about 170 pages into the book, about halfway through almost, before it feels like we're really into the meat and potatoes. And I'm not saying that what happened up here isn't important, but I think that we could have streamlined that a little bit to then kind of flesh out this a little bit more. But at the same time, the urgency of this carries weight. So I guess I don't know what I'm saying. If you have thoughts, share them and I will stop talking to catch mine here for a second. Yeah. Men being angry and physically in romance novels, a 2000s thing or what? Yeah, I definitely. It was very sweet how Quinn writes Colin's emotional realizations as the book went along. How he acted on some of it leaves a lot to be desired. Yes. Also, like just from a like as we're talking about like kind of like the structure stuff, um, I noted, and I may have noted this in the past before as well, but we obviously get the dual third person point of view in this book, which I love. I love a dual POV in my romance, and I especially love a third person dual POV in my romance. But here we have switching of POVs without, it's not chapter by chapter. So we can be in the middle of the chapter and we'll switch point of view, which is interesting because I don't think we see that as much now in historical romance or any romance at all. We're seeing in contemporaries a lot of first person single POVs, which is not all bad by any means. And in historicals, it feels like when we have the dual POV, it's like chapter by chapter. Correct me if your reading experience has been different. Yes. Yes, we're talking Colin's different sides, the insecurities, the clinginess is definitely something in this, and we'll see how that physically presents in the show as well. I knew there's a reason. I have all of the books and I just haven't read them. Sorry, Catherine says I think JJ McAvoy does it. I need to read those books. Um, yes. Saying a lot, I am aware. But I could be doing that, so. Thank you all for putting up with the work there. Okay. Oh, I thought there were comments in that. Am I still sharing? Yes. Sorry about that. That may be annoying to see that just fly by. Yes, it feels like most contemporary romance is first person or chapter by chapter third person. Yeah, from what I've been reading lately, that is my experience as well. And I just, in the same way that I personally don't want to read a first person fan fiction, not to the same extreme, because I think there is a benefit of being in a character's head, but it's just a different experience and it's a different place in the head because we're still getting all of the insecurities of Colin and Penelope here, just in a different way. Okay, so if we go to chapter 9 and 10, is when we get the first kiss. And sorry, Bitterroot is already gone. If you're watching a replay, there was a decent amount of talk about the first kiss in the chat in the story graph. And yeah, what are we thinking about that? Because I think it's presented in the book as Penelope basically asking, being like, I've never been kissed. I want to know what it feels like. You're my friend. Why not? Kind of situation. And there is that same setup plus heightened potential in the show because I assume we are going to present it through the framework of Colin teaching her how to flirt and her needing some kissing lessons or some experience and presenting it that way. So very similar energies, but different presentations. Thoughts? I believe, yeah, the book itself said this was a kiss. And actually, here, Bitterroot pulled out a great quote in the Storygraph. Said, Colin could think of 100 reasons why kissing Penelope Featherington was a very bad idea. The number one being that he actually wanted to kiss her. Colin does a lot of lying to himself, especially in the first half of this book and even into the second, in relation to his desire for Penelope. And so I'm really interested to see how that is going to portray in the show, because he's lying to himself a lot in the narrative, and the balance of like seeing the kind of downplaying and the undermining in a way that can feel a little harsh at times. Like, it's like, no, we want you to be in love with Penelope. We want you to give into those feelings. And he's like holding himself back, or being like, kind of analyzing her, or thinking of her as not remembering her as attractive as she is, or this or that or the other. But it's a lot of lying to himself. And that's how I feel about that. Yes. Ashley says, I actually really love the presentation they're going for with the show. I think it is much more accessible to a modern audience, more familiar, yes, and more active. As I just really, really rag on that first half of this book. I apologize. But in terms of like narrative structure, like the bet is the whole thing. It's the only thing driving this book, other than like those really subtle realizations. And there's not as much like actively driving things forward. And we can do a lot of that same emotional work within the context of something a little bit more active. I feel like the show is gonna give us a new twist on Colin. Absolutely. Just one, from the sheer fact that they partially stole his identity for Benedict. But absolutely, I think there's going to be an added depth to him for sure, because even to a certain extent, the book still relies on his reputation and his affability a little bit too, but then also like the inverse of that. I don't have a full thought there, but there is a thought there. Ashley, forgive my language, forgiven. But I feel like a lot of what Colin will feel this season is, do I really love her, or am I just really horny? Yes. And who hasn't been there? I hope Anthony can be a soundboard, because does Colin have friends? That's what I'm saying. That's why he needs Will. I need Will to be Colin's friend. We have the potential for friendship from last season. I just really need that to happen, because these Bridgerton brothers need an outside perspective. And we'll see. Well, like, no, Benedict has some outside friends, but they're all artists. And can artists be trusted? I say that as a theater person. I'm grouping myself in. I know the drill. It's loving jabs. It's a loving jabs. Ashley's I'll get to you, Catherine. Ashley says, this is the first time I am finding myself excited to see the changes they will make this season, rather than hoping for a direct adaptation. I think it needs updating, though I do truly love this book. I agree. Yeah, like, it's hard because like I feel like I am criticizing it or just like complaining, but I'm not, because I still really love this story. I still really love this couple. That doesn't mean we can't just be like, okay, but why is this thing working in this way, or how can we bolster that? And I think that there's a lot of opportunity in it because of that, where we still get what resonates with us the most and what means the most to us, while still bolstering the narrative potential of it. So we still have, and I think we've seen this in the way they're talking to us, the actors especially Nicola, in talking about the carriage scene and talking about the mirror scene, which again, we all now know based on this reread, isn't realized in the book. It's just a promise that we as readers have held on to since, is it 2002? Potentially 2002. So, yeah, we've been waiting for this for a while. And I will also watch my language, but do with that what you will. Catherine says, oh yeah, Colin is a chaos gremlin, but in the show, he's a college kid trying to show that he's adult now. Yeah. Which, to be fair, maybe they are trying to root that more, because that's how he presents himself in his book. And it is that difficulty too, in that romances, and I know most of you know this, so I am talking to not you if you know this, but in romances, we can know a character in the background for previous books, And then they come front and center in their book, and they can be a vastly different person than we fell in love with. We see that here for sure. I'm trying to think of other examples. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I need to revisit, but I feel like I had a similar experience with West Ravenel in Lisa Kleypas's most recent series, because I was looking so forward to West's book, and then I was like, wait, who are you? Who are you? And maybe it's that I hadn't read The Wallflowers when I finally read that book yet. I know. I've read them now. It's fine. And we see a descendant, a daughter of a popular couple in that book, so I just didn't have as much of the touchstone. Who knows? I'm not going to highlight the spoiler, Ashley. I hadn't read that. I don't know. Maybe it would fit in with the current moment. It might be better than his travel writing. Maybe it's about his. No, we don't like that. We do not like where that thought could lead us. No. I want the travel writing. I maybe it's because I don't read enough travel writing. Maybe it's because like he was being so petulant most of the book that I kind of wanted his writing to be bad. That I was like, is this good travel writing? And it was like the way they were talking about the writing, where it's like it puts me into place. It invokes all of these emotions, and I was like, yes, I too went to the 10th grade, and so I was being a little mean mentally in my head while reading that. I'm not gonna lie, but it could have been very good travel writing, and it could be even better travel writing in the show if given the opportunity. Also, like in relation to the travel, it made me really sad in the book where after they're married, we can talk about all of that too. We barely touched on so many things. There's so much to talk about, which is good news because we're going to be talking about this probably for a while with the show. But when she's like, I want to travel, like she's stuck in this little world. She has this whole new world opened up to her, both with the man that she loves and this possibility of getting out of her small little neighborhood. Like she's just in Mayfair. She's not even allowed to go into London proper, or Colin will lose his mind. And he's like, oh no, we can't do that right now because of Lady Whistledown. And it's such a dick move. I'm not gonna. Good for the 1800s, perhaps. Perhaps. It's no Gulliver's Travels, though. So that wasn't the 1800s, I know. I did have an English teacher in high school, though, give me and a friend a modest proposal. Same authors, Gulliver's Travels, just to see our faces because he didn't think we'd recognize it as satire. I think we disappointed him. Yeah, that's another thing, Ashley. So many of these sources of spoilers, like I don't know what's real, and I don't want to. I've been avoiding them. I've been avoiding them like the plague because I also don't want to be disappointed, but I also don't want to get like upset about something that may or may not be true, or I don't know the context of, and yeah. And again, for anyone who wasn't here earlier, I have been avoiding spoilers. I don't know a lot. I kind of pulled back from a lot of the discourse because of that. Also, I know that some creators and others have got either seen the first episode and or seen the first 6 episodes. I have seen no episodes and will not see any episodes until Thursday, like everybody else. Not that there would be any expectation that I wouldn't, to be clear. I'm just saying my reactions are going to be a little later than some potentially, and I hope that you will still join me for all of that rigmarole. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right, Ashley? They follow you. No, you're fine. You're fine. But no, they're just everywhere. That's what I get for trying to get off TikTok and finding myself on Reddit. I should not have done that. Ashley says, I'm planning to staying awake to watch as soon as it drops. 3 a.m. for me. I have to work, so I will not be doing that. And because I think it drops on on Thursday, which is a weird time. So yeah, so I won't be able to watch until after work. Oh yeah, that'll be so fun. A Bridgerton watch party would be really fun. I have a friend that I think I might do a watch. I mean, I haven't raised this with her yet, but eventually may do a watch through with. Yeah, work Friday. I work both, which I'm very grateful for. So I will not. I'm still very new to the role, so I need to focus on that, and then I will focus here and circle back with all of my thoughts to you and to be able to talk with all of you about it as soon as possible. So I thank you for your patience in advance. I will say this is a little dark, not dark, but last season, my grandpa passed away. So like I got my stuff out later because that was going on. Like I literally watched it, like some of it on my phone in my childhood bed. It was a great escape. But I was sitting at work earlier this week and my dad accidentally pocket dialed me. He does not call me during the day. And I was like, oh no, it's happened again. Obviously, it was a way of dealing with the fear in the moment, but thank goodness, everything's fine. We're all fine. Everyone's fine. It was a pocket dial. Yeah, that's smart, Grace. Took PTO. I would have if I wasn't. I'm using all of mine in the fall, so I just have to avoid the internet entirely for maybe 2 days. I did it for the trailer though, so surely I can pull it off. Yes. Yes, it did help me. It did help me escape, Ashley. Yeah, that year. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that year is over. Let's save that. Okay, so we haven't talked really. I know we've been here for a second. my brother pocket dials me all the time. I know the fear. Yeah, I forgot it was possible, but I shouldn't have. We haven't talked about a lot of the fan favorite scenes, by which I mean we haven't really dug into the carriage scene, and we haven't really dug into the drawing room scene, the engagement ball, and thereafter, and the finale, which I consider like the seminal Polin moments. I know I didn't contribute anything to the favorite Polin moments section of the read-along board. I apologize. Those are some of my favorite Polin moments. What are some of your favorite Polin moments? I really like the carriage scene for the matching of wits. I like the parlor scene for like Colin showing appreciation of Penelope to people who should appreciate her and maybe aren't. Not maybe, they aren't. But just like that declaration. I love the engagement ball because I don't love it and it makes me sad, but I think that it's really angsty and I think it's going to hurt me. I love the finale because of the triumph of it. And I think there's a lot of potential there. Yay! I was working but read the book along with y'all. We're glad to have you reading along with y'all. Catherine says, at the end, when Colin gets a book published and Penelope is writing her own novel and they support each other. Yes, it's a beautiful little tie-up. And I love that, like, we know to expect a pregnancy and an epilogue, especially from a book at this time, and it's there. But that we also get their professional successes. And we see that with Benedict as well. Anthony, to some extent, as well. Although I think it's mostly Paul and Mall. Ashley says, for me, the first kiss scene holds a special place in my heart because it was so vulnerable and also heartbreakingly sweet. She was so brave to ask, and it is the catalyst for his realizations. Yes, it is the catalyst. It is an important active moment. And I think that that is really important to remember too. Like, it's not just a kiss. And I think there's nothing wrong with just a kiss either. But I think that the way that they've been talking about all of the intimacy in this season, and I think I said something along these lines earlier as well. So bear with me. But that it seems like it's all going to be really driving character revelations and relationship plot development, because we're seeing the way this relationship morphs and changes in these moments. So it is all serving a really important purpose. Plus, a kiss is for two people. Yes. Yes. And then it kind of like really shakes up his entire world. He does not know what to do with the fallout of that kiss, and that it's such like an unassuming moment for her in a lot of ways. It's, in her mind, her closing of the chapter, and instead it blows the whole thing open for both of them, but especially for Colin. Sorry, friends, just checking. Yes. Okay. This is a great point too. Driving relationship plot. I would love the show to develop more and why Colin chooses to court Penn where the book did not. Yes. To see that be a more active choice, because I think this ties into what I was talking about earlier with a lot of Colin's inner dialogue in the book being a lot of lying to himself and denial. I think seeing that be a much more active choice in the show, or him having to grapple with that more actively, though there is also action in that fight and in that denial, but seeing it be a little bit more intentional, I think, would play into that point as well. Oh, yeah, that's a great moment too, Ashley. Does anyone else love the Berkeley Square dance scene? I don't think we'll get it in the show. I don't think we will either. But yeah, just the sweetness of it, and like the fact that they're in the middle of the lawn, they could be seen by anyone. The kind of freedom of that, where it's the freedom Penelope finds in the book, in that she doesn't think she has to worry, or doesn't for whatever reason have to worry in the same way that she has in the past, because she considers herself and society considers herself for firmly on the shelf, and what that means. And so yeah, the sweetness of that moment I think is really lovely. Yeah, Grace says, I agree that I don't think we'll get it in the show, but I do love that scene. Yeah, agree. I think we do need some of those sweet moments to balance everything else out, because we're going to have the angst, we're going to have that vulnerability and the anger and the jealousy, and we know that we're going to have the comedic bits. So I think that they're very aware that they have to balance that out. But where is it going to fall, I think? Also, now that we're almost 2 hours in, because I always forget about this part, if you want to like the conversation we're having, hit the like button or whatever. I'm so good at this, you know. In the book, Colin is obsessed with how Penn looks. Maybe they will emphasize it with Penn's humor or wit. Red hair or change of fashion, just like how Anthony took to Kate smelling like lilies. Yeah. Yeah, the change like that the makeover bit, I think they're going to play in, because they're really talking about the rom-com angle of it and really comparing it to like a lot of the rom-coms of at least my childhood. And I think that the makeover scene in those rom-coms is so pivotal to a lot of them, but the joke has always been they never were ugly. And I think that that is part of the point here, is that it's about like the demeanor and her gaining that confidence and realizing what she's always had all along. And so I think that that will be an interesting conversation with the media of the past as well. Ashley says, they have said this season will be all about the romance, but that is so broad. I just want more details on what they mean. Do they mean sexy? Do they mean the longing angst? Do they mean friends too? I assume lovers. I know we are finding out soon, but I find the idea of romance to be too broad to really figure out what they mean. I think that's an excellent point. That like it's like, yes, you are defining the word with the word. Let's get a little bit more specific. And it may be that they can't. It may be that they just don't want to. Who knows? I'm very interested in the rom-com framing angle that they've mentioned a couple of times because on its face, it's not something that I would think that I would want in this story, but at the same time, I really think I can see it. But it's also interesting because like the Colin in the show isn't the goofy Colin we're used to, where that would read or make a little more sense. He does still have his goofball moments though, and we see him jabbing with his siblings. So he's still ornery. There's still that potential. I'm not ignoring that by any means, but it is interesting. Bum, bum. Going back to the story graph here. If you have other thoughts, keep them coming. But also, yeah, the first kiss is pretty late because it's like chapter 9 or 10 based on where we're talking about it in the story graph. The Cressida announcement is chapter 11, which means the Lady Whistledown revelation is probably the end of chapter 12. So like, yeah, that's just a lot. And just like that moment where Penelope talks about like she couldn't let Cressida take credit for everything she had built. That's so good. Yeah, agreed. The PR has been so well done. We know so much and yet so little. They have balanced it so well. Props to the PR marketing this season. Absolutely. They've been working hard. Again, I have not been watching some of the more recent like gossip stuff that they've been releasing, like where the characters talking directly to us, because I just don't like the fourth wall being broken in my face. But it's very interesting. And I love, as a dramaturg, I love that all of the marketing and PR is textually connected or thematically connected to the season, which on its face is like, well, duh, but is really smart. And it's playing into how big the fan base has become, how active the fan base has become for good or ill in some moments, even within the PR campaign itself. And I do not envy that social media manager, for sure. I have a favorite Colin quote. I love you for all of your smiles. Quite intimate and fond in their relationship, going from friends to lovers. Yes. And I think that plays in too to the moment in the trailer that I keep mentally going back to of them just laughing together, like those sweet moments. And I think we need those sweet moments to balance out everything else and make those other like emotional high points really hit as well. So we get both. We get a balance. Ashley says, I remember when I first read that scene of Penn not wanting Cressida to take credit for her hard work and being just as loved as her. I was 100% behind her. When I read it again, I just wanted her to take a breath and not write that letter because I have caught myself acting on emotions like that and it biting me in the butt as it does Penn. Yes. And like, just think like this book was before we really had like social media clapbacks and things of like the ease of emotional reactions at this level. And so I think that's going to resonate even more now. And because the verbal slip up that she does in the book is pretty notable. It really is an indicator. Cressida is smart, they tell us, but she doesn't have to be that smart to catch that verbal moment for sure. Which honestly makes it frustrating because they spend a whole half a book being like, we don't know who Lady Whistledown is. And then they're like waving it around at the end. It's fine. I'm just going to be bitter about the pacing forever. Yes, livid. I meant livid. Yes. yeah, like the understanding the emotional instinct of it, but feeling like we behave differently at the same time. And it's so interesting and fun to return to moments like that and see how we perceive them differently at different times or different points of our life or with different experiences. Absolutely. But also, okay, how do we think they're going to handle it? Because we do have the moment of triumph at the end, but people have been very clamoring for Polin, and very excited for this season and this couple. And Polin as a couple in the book also don't get some of those touchstone moments. So there was a lot of upset last season that we didn't get the wedding. And in the book, we don't get the wedding. We're like, and we're skipping over this. And even if we do get the wedding, it will be a much smaller affair if we follow the book, which we might not, but probably will. And so we'd have that. And like the engagement ball isn't that moment of triumph because it is colored by the fight. But then we have the moment after the fight. And does that change how we perceive that moment? Does that make that a little bit more bittersweet than triumphant? I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts. Will we get the balcony scene where we get a love declaration? That would be. I still have this visual image that I would love to see realized of just like letters, like Lady Whistledown's letters. And am I just imagining this from an earlier season and forget where it was? Maybe. Of just like the papers flying down as everyone is. Well, they could do that in the engagement ball, would make the most sense, unfortunately. It would be visually stunning and emotionally devastating. But however they play off that, the I am Lady Whistledown moment, there's potential there. There's potential there is all I'm saying. Yes. I need the cascading. So, okay, I have not imagined this. It's in the book, isn't it? I'm not smart enough to have come up with that on my own. I need the cascading Whistledown letters, but I have a feeling things will be shuffled a lot this season plot-wise. I agree. But I think structurally we're set up where the beginning, like the first half could be like the Penelope doubling, like all of that like romantic comedy stuff going on and the realization of like true feelings. And then the second half could be a little bit more in line with the book in terms of like kind of dealing with the fallout of Lady Whistledown. Because again, structurally, we got to give ourselves something to do for that first half. Ooh, that's an interesting thought. All I want to see is if the Lady Whistledown persona will take center stage in part 2. That could be interesting. Yeah. And again, we're gonna have to see like how the voiceover works because we did see or have seen, the marketing like campaign where we start out with like Lady Whistledown talking about the characters. In Penelope's, we see her claiming her voice. In others, we see them, like in Eloise's, talking directly back to her. So whether we will see or hear Julie Andrews as the voice of Whistledown for the entirety of the show, or whether Penelope will claim that voice midway through. Especially because they're going to have to make something be a moment as revelatory in her revelation of being Lady Whistledown as we get in the book, since we already know. And we've already had the kind of that moment with her and Penelope as well. So it's going to be something. I don't know that they'll do the revelation like they do in the book, but they could, because it makes sense. It's visually like it's visually evocative. I don't know that that's the word I'm looking for. Okay. Ashley says, so usually episode 6 seems to be the episode the writing team places the climax. But with the split this season, it is almost impossible to know if the Lady Whistledown reveal will be the breaking point or save for part 2. Yeah. I mean, there are people that know because there are people who've gotten screeners through episode 6, but they are sworn to secrecy, so they can't tell us until we'll have known anyway. But that is interesting in context too, because knowing that they're holding really tight to these last two episodes, conceivably. And so what is in them? Like what knowing like the kind of structure, and that season or episode 6 seems to usually be an emotional high point of the season, all of that. That's interesting. And like, can you imagine having gotten those episodes and like having to sit without that resolution now? That would be tough. That would be tough. Do, do, do. I'm really interested. I want to know what this carriage scene is, friends. Has everyone seen the trailers? I assume we're just talking about the trailer that dropped, or are there more trailers that I missed? I feel like I've watched some of the international, but I don't know if I've watched all of them because I got real scared of all the spoilers. Which I know isn't helpful because I do know there was what was the ad that was posted? Was it France? Was it Brazil? And there was just like a lot of moments of Penelope crying, and that just made me very nervous. But then I wasn't paying enough attention to track if all of the cuts of her crying were from this season or not. I agree. I feel through the character profiles, Benedict has more story this season. I agree. He being Luke had a real hard time talking around potential Benedict spoilers in the February panel. So I assume he's got a lot going on. And I have been actively avoiding spoilers related to him because I feel like people are having feelings about something going on with him. And I needed to protect my peace. Yeah, okay. Okay. I'll double check those, Grace, just to make sure I'm ready. I'm here and I'm ready. Okay, cool. I guess I didn't realize, or is that the one I was thinking of? I don't think it was. If it was a full, I'll double check. And I'm sorry I'm not coming to you with all of the official knowledge. Any other? I feel like there's both so much more to talk about, and I don't know where to go next or if we even still want to keep talking. So I am good with whatever. Okay, hit me with the theory. It's official. So I don't want to push information if you don't want it, but it plays into a theory I have for part 1 will break. I'm always interested in structural theories as well. So go for it. Hit me with it. Yep, same. I am nervously awaiting how they will close the Marina chapter. I have been nervous about that since they introduced her in season 1. So yeah. I think most of us who have read the books have, because there was that moment when they were introducing the characters for season 1 where we were all like, who? Who? Okay. That was a fun time. We had no clue then where we'd be now. I don't think we did. Okay, here we go. Ashley says there is a scene where it shows Colin running out of a ball. combined with a snippet of him in a carriage, almost looking like he will cry. I feel like I've seen that clip. I feel like this is the moment he learns about Lady Whistledown, and I believe it will be the carriage scene. That sounds right to me. Like, that makes sense to me. Has all the markings of the carriage scene from the book, while still making sense within context of the show. Yeah. That it'll be interesting to know like how that revelation plays out. I wonder if it would be him overhearing something between Eloise and Penelope potentially in the show, because dialogue is going to be a lot more active on the screen in terms of that and those beats, especially if Eloise is getting nervous about how close Colin and Penelope are getting, which I feel like based on the trailer is a reasonable assumption. Let's see how they will display Colin's bro moment. I can't believe I'm having feelings. What are those? Like, listen, every Bridgerton's got to have it. Those Bridgerton brothers, they're so aware of when their brothers are going through it and so unaware of when they are going through it. Oh, and we still have at least we still have the Bridgerton brothers scene in Eloise's book to look forward to. They can't take that from us, right? They wouldn't. I don't think they would. I'm very interested, yeah, in how the carriage scene is going to play out. Well, and if they do it because they're running out on a ball, so it's night, then they could do the parlor scene the next day, and that would be a reasonable break. Because I've thought that that's probably going to be the break. It just makes sense. 0% personal emotional awareness with the Bridgerton boys. Trademarked. Let's put that on a shirt. They'd probably sell it, for sure. People would buy it. They probably already have it on an Etsy store somewhere. Because it's true. I hope the engagement is the first part of the second half. Do you mean the parlor scene or the engagement ball? Because I think the ball will be earlier in the second half, because then we still have to go through the emotional journey of them as newlyweds, although I guess that's not a given anymore. Oh, but maybe we'll have to go through the emotional journey of them as newlyweds. We'll cross our fingers. That is the most likely to me. The wrench in the plan is when, if at all, does Debling propose? That is what is throwing me. Yeah, same. I can't figure out how serious that courtship is. But I like the idea of the emotional angst there, from both of them, because like, again, I know we've talked about this before, like Colin is not a bad guy, right? He is our romantic hero. He wants the best for Penelope and is probably recognizing that this is the best move for her, while also recognizing his own feelings. And that stinks, especially when combined with the fact that he probably on some level is aware of the crush. So like there's that extra layer of knowing you could have had the thing and that the timing just wasn't the same. And yes, I'm going to keep doing that, I guess. The engagement after they clash once Colin discovers Penelope's secret. Yeah. They carriage scene, they get engaged, break there, or they leave us hanging on the engagement. But I feel like the engagement, or even if it's like in the book, it's like, well, you're going to marry me, aren't you? That's such a good moment to end on. And then parlor scene. So that opens us back up with a fan favorite kind of lighter scene that still has emotional weight. And then moving into the engagement and or marriage that may or may not happen. And then the Lady Whistledown stuff. And like the real turn of that, though the queen comes into the picture in the show, in a way that I really cannot understand. I mean, I can understand it, but I don't know how to factor it in fully, so I guess we'll see. There's a lot of pieces on the board that I'm not going to be able to fully account for between Will and Alice that I hope are Colin's friends, but there's surely a lot more going on with them. And then the Lady Danbury and her relative and Violet. Anything else going on with the Featheringtons, the Cressida and Eloise friendship. There's a lot. But I just want to see Penelope yell at Colin some more. I think it's going to be fun. And again, he's going to yell back, but it's going to just be really emotionally satisfying to see her just like yell at him. Ashley says, with how much they've included Cressida this year, I feel like we are going to learn more about her home life from what has been said, and I think it will be interesting to see. Yeah, absolutely. They've got something in the works there, clearly. I don't know what, but we'll see for sure. Especially, well, no, because I don't know where I heard that, and I don't know if it's a spoiler. And I don't know if it's realized, so I'll keep my mouth shut. Yeah, it won't excuse her behavior, but it would explain some. And I think that they're complicating, and they've always or are wanting to complicate the idea of the constraints of this period. And I think balancing like the way that Penelope's role in society really traps her, and also mirroring it, because they really love mirrors this season, with how Cressida, who should be at the top of society, is also trapped. And also, is she at the top of society because she wasn't the diamond of the season, and she's been on the mart just as long as Penelope now. And so what the reality of that is, since she's not going to be a destitute widower in this book or in the show like she is in the book. Yes, that's a good point. The lack of a time jump also complicates things plot-wise for the show. What are our thoughts on that? I editorialized the thoughts part a little bit, clearly. It's hard because, like, emotionally, it puts them in much different frames of mind in terms of their ages, for sure. And I think they can have similar journeys, but at the same time, it's going to be a lot different because, like, your reaction, and at the same time, Penelope isn't that old in the books. She's like, what? It tells us directly, but she's like mid to late 20s. She definitely calls me very old, specifically in the book. 28. Thank you. So, but 28 is much, much different than, like, how old was, someone remind me, how old was she? Because she came out early in season 1. So she would have come out, how old is she? Like 15, 16? Or was she younger? I want to say, is she around 19? Does this even matter in the math? Like, but those are very different life experiences, and some of the freedom that Penelope has claimed in the book comes with her age. And so we're not going to be exploring that in the same way. It's going to be a different kind of breaking free. No, I will not break into High School Musical right now. I don't know if that's the way you meant it, or if you meant more literal plot-wise. Yeah, I want to say she's like 18 or 19, which on some level I'm like, should she be getting married? She's just a baby. I believe in happily ever after, but she's just a bit. That's one thing I do appreciate in historical romance is like the aging up of our heroines, and not just because I'm also getting older, but like as a teenager, well, no, as a teenager, I shouldn't have associated with Penelope so much because she was a much older heroine. I remember when I read Outlander in high school, I originally struggled a little bit because I I remembered thinking she was like in her 30s or something, and at the time I just could not conceive of it. Look where we are now. Okay, Grace says she's 19 in season 3, so between Ashley, Grace, and I, yeah. Any and all ways, it all affects and complicates the plot, character development, and also moving up the story to fit where they are now in the show. Well, for one, yes. Okay, for one, just in terms of Francesca, because in the book, again, she shows up more in this book than we've ever seen her. And in the book, she's just like, oh yeah, Francesca's in town. I'm gonna see her, or oh, I visit Francesca when I'm in Scotland, and like that's the most we've seen her. But we're definitely going to see her more in the show. We're going to know her better by the end of this season than we ever knew her before her book, for sure. But that changes that timeline in relation. So then we're going to have to, but it matches because it says in the book that she's been widowed for 2 years. And if we have 2 seasons between now and her season, that at least kind of matches up. Yeah, for some reason, people decide that if you're 25 and not married, you're over the hill. Remember how Kate was considered a spinster at 26? Yeah. And I mean, they're definitely playing into some of the tropes of how age is approached in historical romance. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 33. I should know what I'm doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it really makes you reconsider the ages of people in these romances. Hello, Catherine. I'm imagining Kate carrying around a bowl of soup like Mrs. Bennet with her jelly aprons or jelly spoon on Pride and Prejudice 2005. Oh, no, we talked about that already. Never mind. I was like, what's our Pride and Prejudice reference going to be this year? And then I remembered I'm still counting the dream sequence as somewhat of a Pride and Prejudice reference. So we're going to have to keep our eye out next season. Next season will be the real test. But yeah, the shifting of the timeline does impact things. And actually, were you the one that like did the timeline in comparison, Bridgerton in comparison to Queen Charlotte? Are you the keeper of the cursed math there? Who's the keeper of the cursed math there? It can't be me. But you may have to add this into the mix. Okay. Don't think that was me. I'm terrible at math. Whoever it was, I'm not trying to steal your glory in the cursed math. Oh, Violet had Hyacinth at age 54. Like in the book or in the show? I'm bad at math. Yes, Violet this year. I know it's been kind of contentious. We've had mixed thoughts even within our own group in relation to this, though everyone has been very respectful of each other's thoughts. The problem is I can see it both ways. Oh yeah, okay, because 12-year-old Violet was in Queen Charlotte. Yeah, she's definitely not. She looks real good. That's the secret. The secret age ball. Now we know the secret. Yeah, show has a very loose concept of time, and honestly, same. I cannot check these timelines. It's storytelling time. It all, and I know that's not the answer. As a literary manager and a dramaturg, I should be, and when it calls for it, I do pay more attention to that. I promise. But this is just for fun. Yes. Okay, so yeah, I mean that is beyond even for geriatric pregnancy. I mean, vaguely possible, but 54. It's not something I want to think about. It's no. Abs- now I'm thinking about it, and I don't want to be. They could have let it. They could have let it be ambiguous, and sure, let Violet be there, but they didn't. And now she got married in her late 30s and had Hyacinth at 54. Okay, so Catherine was clearly the keeper of the cursed mouth. We found the answer. That makes sense in retrospect. I love the none of this makes sense shouting into the void. But how do we can you coin the euphemism storytelling time? That makes perfect sense in this case. Yes. We will use storytelling time in our analysis of all further Bridgerton media and remind me when I inevitably forget by the end of this week. It is a curse. I can't unsee it. It is your you are the Cassandra of the Bridgerton time. Except we do believe you. You're just cursed to see it first and to be the one to bring it to the masses. Okay. Ashley says, back to Violet. Although I could just sit here giggling about cursed math all night. Honestly, I am torn on Violet finding love again. Yeah. From the books, I cannot see it. For the show, though, they placed the whole garden thing in. I think it would be wise to explore it a little. I agree in that I can see it from both angles, and I think it's a really hard position because, especially because they talked at the February panel too about how important it has been for everyone to see love reflected, and that age component as well. I think is very important in that exploration, and well, we're going to see with Francesca the second chance at love. But it's hard because in the books it's not textually rooted, and we want to believe in that great love that she had with I forget his name. Is it Edmund? It starts with an E. Rescue me. we we want to believe in that love, and yet it also almost feels cruel to have a character who's not just kind of like popping in and out like a book character. Yes, Edmund. Okay, thank you, Catherine. You are also the keeper of names. Um, a book character functions much differently than a show character in a lot of ways, and if we, it's hard because Violet's moments with her children are incredibly satisfying and beautiful. But we're coming off of season 2, where there was a lot of trauma associated with her reaction to the death of her husband, understandable, and how that impacted Antony. And there is a narrative through line there. And if in the books, Violet always exists in relation to her children, which makes sense. The books are always centered on the couple. The couple is always going to be the center of the storytelling. The show has to operate slightly differently in that. And so if we have this woman this strong, likable woman who only ever exists in service to her children in the show, does that read differently? I'm not saying that only existing in service to your children is bad either. There is a lot of value in that. We know that Violet takes pride in motherhood, and I think there's going to be a lot of complexity and a lot of potential guilt from her in that this season, if that is being explored in the way we think it is. I had a furtheration of this thought that I'm trying to find where I left the thread dangling. It was good. It was good. But I guess mentally I'm always going back to that moment in season 1 where she rolls over and just like places her arm, was it her arm, in the empty spot on the bed? And that just breaks me every time. Just thinking about it makes me sad. So I'm gonna pause to see what you all are saying in the chat here, but yeah, I think that's a good point. I think Violet deserves to see if it is even possible for her, and it could be playing in, and again, mirroring. We could have a lot of plot lines that are mirroring each other with the main couple this season, which I think is a smart way to do it to further advance other people while still staying rooted in that main plot line, if that's how we're approaching it. Penelope and Colin have to be able to choose the thing. So Violet is going to see an option and make a choice, whether she wants that or not. If that does that is that clear? It's clear up here. I don't think that it's coming out as clearly in words. Imagine how the kids are not going to react well. Anthony, well, actually, Anthony may handle it better now that he is settled. Benedict is going to go off on he's just going to disappear for a while. Colin is going to be in the middle of chaos and not react well. Hyacinth is going to think it's hilarious, but not really fully understand what's going on. Those are my gut instincts. I retain the right to update those thoughts. Yeah. It could be good comedic relief. Yeah. And forcing them to see her outside of her being their mother as well. Catherine, you always have the jokes. Is Lady D's brother going to be our new daddy? The brother is just sweating. Yes, I love season 2 for that because we saw how Violet dealt with grief and wasn't the perfect mother, where in the books Edmund and her seemed almost too perfect for me. I think that's a great observation. And to not make light, it wasn't voyeuristic in its exploration of the grief, but it didn't make light of it either. And it was forcing the audience to look at some realities of that situation and the situation that someone like Violet would have been in a way that was in, I think, really important conversation with our modern moment, especially in relation to her pregnancy with Hyacinth, that I don't think can be understated, especially in our modern moment. And let's just be frank about it, in a post-Dobbs world. And Ashley says, oh, same, which is part of why I feel like I want to see her love again, at least a little. If she feels it is right, then I trust her, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think so. It's about the character having the autonomy and getting to see them make a choice. And is it going to be hard to see them like battle through those choices? Absolutely. I've talked about my like problem with secondhand embarrassment a lot. I mean, problem is a strong word, but it's not easy all the time to like see those moments that are a little cringy. But those are strong narrative moments. Yeah, I think I'm also a huge fan of the One Great Love Story, but in reality, people do remarry or find intimacy in varying ways after the death of a spouse. I feel like the show balances that well. Yeah. And it's hard because I also like the idea of exploring exploring that romantic love isn't the be all end all, but this is a romance series. That's what I'm here for. You know, I can explore all the complicated stuff on my own time, you know? And instead I'm using my own time to be here. So there was a thought there. Yeah, no, the kids will not be all right. Let's be honest. No, that's the whole point. I think is the chaos, pure chaos, and to give the actress who plays Violet, whose name I should know off the top of my head, more material because she's so good. To be completely honest. Yeah, it balances real versus societal expectations, both in reality and the literary sense. And maybe we'll get to see more of Lady Danbury's club. That's as close as we've gotten to a gaming hell, let's be completely honest. I mean, Will's Club, kind of, but not really. I don't remember seeing any cards out. Lady Danbury's ladies definitely had cards out. I got nothing. Don't get me started on secondhand embarrassment. I'm right there with you. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to get over it because they're really pitching the rom-com. So just that one little bit in the park really gets me. And that's part of the longer scene. Yeah, Lady Danbury's. Listen, anything that remotely resembles a gaming hell, it's gonna stick up in the noggin. Because I haven't really rewatched season 1. I guess I should do that. But yeah, there's just so much. I think there are obviously going to be a lot of changes to the book. We know this. We've accepted it, and we've agreed, at least in this space, that some of those changes are ultimately necessary. But it still gives so much room to play while allowing us what we love. And in some ways, the lopsided structure of the book is going to work in our favor because we're not going to have to sacrifice as much narratively to these other plot points potentially because of how much is kind of like dancing, how much can be consolidated narratively in the first half of this book, especially because so much of it can be done in non-dialogue acting beats and like glances and things. I know the terms in the show, right? Like you can have the longing glances, you can have the little exchanges and the little moments that read a lot or encapsulate a lot of the mental conversation that we see in the book. Do I even have time to rewatch season 1 and season 2? I don't know. I don't know if I do either. We might have to. I've rewatched parts of season 2. There are parts I skip. I'm not going to lie to you. Because I can. Yes. We are all in agreement here that they need to bring Lady Danbury's club back, which means contractually they need to bring it back. Yeah, the Featherington plot, some of the stuff with Edwina still makes me really sad. I'm not going to lie to you. And by some of it, I mean a lot of it, which stinks because I love that actress. I'm just so glad that so many people are hyped for this season and have been reading the books to prep. Yes, let's put a pin in that for a second. It gives me nostalgia for those good old days of everyone reading a book and being excited. Yeah, because it with the age of personalization and how we can kind of like filter into our own little sections, which we're essentially kind of doing here, to be fair, it's less and less common to find those touchstones of communal excitement, especially around books. So it's nice and to see people get so excited and to revisit this series that I think a lot of us have revisited or found or discovered in other times of our lives, and then getting to welcome in new people who are discovering it for the first time through the show, and then them getting just as excited about the books and being just as loud about what scenes from the books they want to remain, but again also recognizing that there are things that can and should potentially be updated from 2002 and or before and or slightly after. Yeah, we can relitigate a lot about season 2. But we'll leave it. We'll leave it. We got so much good and so much other stuff too. Yeah, for adaptations a la Harry Potter, Twilight, or Hunger Games. Yeah. What was I was thinking? Oh, it was not a Touchstone adaptation, but I like was looking at my analytics yesterday, and like saw that someone had watched my video about the Artemis Fowl movie, which was a very early video and not as refined. and is one of my angriest reviews in that I did not like it. It was not good. So if you want to hear me screaming into the void a little bit and can accept lower production values than we're even at now, that exists. But yeah. What have we not discussed about Romancing Mister Bridgerton yet? What is on our list or on your list that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about more? Yes, Catherine. That was the vibe of the discussion. Absolutely. Connor McPherson took some strays from me as well because I felt the most betrayed by him, but that's fine. I expected it from Kenneth Branagh. Anything else? I guess it is past, for some of you, potentially past 11. So thank you if you're still with me. Thank you if you're still with me, even if it is not past 11 or being here at all in any way, shape, or form. Oh, another thing with the book, like the books, like the demand for like all these special editions. Like even I haven't bought a lot of these like re-release special editions. I saw Catherine mention like hardcovers and like hardcover releases, and the fact that they're still like snapped up. And just like that is interesting because again, like I bought my copy of Romancing Mister Bridgerton in a discard sale of a small public library. And so we just come so far. Yeah, I agree. This was a robust and great discussion. And I'm really grateful for everyone that joined in whatever way, whether you were contributing, lurking, it's all part of the puzzle, but really, really enjoy the thoughts that we brought up. Yes. Yes, we can, Ashley. Can we talk about the book cover they released for Romancing, the Netflix cover? I am so mad because of the filters. Was it because of the filters? Because I don't like the filters. It's like a wannabe influencer got a hold of it in that like it's like what a wannabe influencer would post and people would be like, we can see the filter. Yeah, in rereading Julia Quinn, I'm a little salty they don't have step backs. Yes. Do you want to see my step back? I'm gonna show it to you anyway. I like the step back, but I honestly, truly, one can figure out this does not look like Colin and Penelope to me. I'm sorry. I can't see the vision. And the vision made sense I threw off the white balance. Oh no. Okay, there we go. The vision surely made sense in 2002, but yes, she looks so photoshopped and Nicola shared the original. Yeah, like the fact that Nicola felt called to share the original. Honestly, they should have just taken the cut off of them in the cast poster and it would have been perfect. Yeah. They flipped her face. It doesn't even look like her. Yeah. Very Fabio-esque. Yeah, if they oh yeah, in the setback, yeah. Nope, that's not Colin and Penelope. Agreed. Which like I think they potentially were going for that look of illustrated cover with this romancing cover. One, they released the tie-in cover way too late in this whole process. Two, the cover then is bad. And I like if I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, they potentially were trying to replicate or like invoke an old illustrated cover, but it's not working and it feels disrespectful to Nicola. I will have to stare at the bookshop I work at, and I don't want to. It's so bad. Although I am grateful that the bookstore you work at stocks it. which I know like Bridgerton, it's going to get stocked, but I've been so discouraged. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been really discouraged lately about the boom in romance, which I love, but feeling like historical romance is getting pushed out even as it should be gaining fans with Bridgerton, and I just can't figure out what the disconnect is. And it's making me kind of sad. And it's not to say that there aren't new historical romances coming out and that people aren't fans of historical romance. But yeah. Yeah, the Viscount cover was so much better. Hey, Christy. And they did wait too long to release. They had over 2 years. Like, right? What were you doing? No one was striking for covers. I'm looking at the cover online. What am I looking at? Yeah, I was legitimately considering buying the tie-in cover of this book, and I am no longer considering it. Let's put it that way. Yeah, contemporary romance are definitely the top sellers right now, and I feel that this is potentially controversial and not meant as disrespectful, because there are a lot of contemporary romances I really love, and there are a lot of contemporary romances right now that aren't hitting the emotional beats for me, that don't feel like they have the weight in terms of that character work and the relationship work. And are they funny if they're pitched as a rom-com? Or do they just have a heroine that trips a lot? Because I lived through the 2000s. I can I can read a heroine that trips a lot with the best of them. I promise I'm not petty all the time. Chris says, historical romance is my favorite, and it makes me so sad not to see it stocked in stores. Yeah. Like, there are romance-specific bookstores, I'm going to try to be as cagey here as possible, that to varying degrees of success, and it can be very evident where they became fans of romance in what they're stocking. And again, not disrespectful. It's just a bummer when you go in very excited and you don't see what you love there. And you no longer feel like you are part of the community that you've considered yourself part of since you were a teenager, at the time when it's becoming so much of a communal experience. That makes sense. So again, thanks for being here. And again, I do like contemporary too. I don't want to imply, like, I like everything. I'll read everything. I would say except Westerns, except I keep getting proven wrong, especially by Beverly Jenkins. Case in point, Catherine and I have discovered Beverly Jenkins. Yeah. Ashley says, also not just historical romance, but historical fiction in general has been on a downturn for a while. Yes. You are articulating something that I've kind of danced around for years on this channel. I can't get them to bring in Philippa Gregory, but I'm pushing for it. Like, to buy it at the store, even? That's interesting. But yeah, the historical fiction, but the most popular historical fiction, it feels like since like 2014, has been like World War I, World War II era stuff, which, not begrudging. That's my mom's preferred era in historical fiction. I get it. I know that other historical fiction exists. I've definitely got some on my shelf that I need to read that has come out in the last couple of years. So I should probably prioritize that for Feature Fridays so that we have more options to talk about with historical fiction, right? But it feels like that's not as robust as it has been in terms of like a wide breadth. In the same way that even in historical romance, we've really kind of locked in, unfortunately, for better or for worse, in like the Regency era, in a way that when I was a teenager, I remember having like a breadth of eras that I was reading in. Like, I had Julia Quinn for my Regencies, and I had Julie Garwood for my Scottish romances and my medievals, and it just felt like there was more breadth there. Lynn Carland for my time travel romances. Karen Marie Moning for my time travel romances. Did you know she has a new book coming out this fall? Because I learned that this week. Yes, I'm behind on Beverly Jenkins too, Catherine, which I am ashamed of. I read what was the one I read most recently? I read it for a video. I did a March Madness video to try and read down some of my historical romance TBR, and I read the Mail Order Bride one. It's the one. It's the sister or the brother from Spring's book, Tempest. But is it Rebel that's still my favorite? Because in that one, the hero builds a schoolhouse for his love interest. And like, what is more romantic than that? Come on. Yeah, and in general, I'm noticing more 30 plus readers of Bridgerton and historical romance. Yes. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think that tracks. I think that tracks. I think that's a good observation. But not all. I've seen a lot, which I know you're not saying. I've seen some younger, but like, yeah, like my romance book club is all women around the same age as me. But yes, World War II, why so much? And like again, I'm not begrudging people who really like reading in that era. I have to take it in small doses because it's never felt far enough away to me, and it's never felt less far than now. Oh yeah, I'm struggling. See, this is fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating, like the reading trends and like the things that cycle because I have never read Colleen Hoover, and I know that she has sold a lot of books, and there's a lot of discussion to be had right there. I'm not getting into the discussion, but I know that like TikTok is like really credited. I know we've moved on from Romancing Mister Bridgerton, but we're all friends here and we're having a great chat. Um, has really like been credited with her rise in popularity. But I remember when I was a bookseller, she was on in caps all the time. Like she was, that may have just revealed where I was a bookseller. She was very popular even then to a certain extent. And I wasn't in a store that sold a lot of romance or like that was our main category, but I took great pride in being the person that people could come to for recommendations on romance. Yes, I agree. Yes, I do wish they would give the books a chance. Or like if because I understand that for some readers there are like dated hiccups in the books that they may struggle with more, which is why I'm also sad that like we're seeing less new historical romances coming out. It feels like we're seeing less chances taken on new historical romance authors. We did get the Adriana Herrera series that is finishing up this year that has been top tier, not mass market. I have all but confirmed from a friend who is a literary agent. Granted, she doesn't rep romance, but they're trying to kill mass market, and they're probably going to succeed. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't always love the way the historical romances have moved to trade paperback. I think Cat Sebastian has been the most successful for me. Okay, yeah. Let me catch up with what we're saying over here. Ashley says Book Talk has changed the way younger readers view books. They want to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. I am struggling to keep up, and a lot of modern romance has a lot of dark mental health. Yeah, the keeping up with the Joneses. It's surely dated kind of conceptually now, but I did a whole video about the kind of keeping up with the Joneses thing, not necessarily framed through the TikTokification of things. And I'm sure, like, again, I recognize that anytime there's been a new platform that there have been similar impetuses, but I feel like we can all probably agree to some extent that there has been an expediting of it with TikTok, and I don't consider it all bad, obviously, by any means. I'm happy people are discovering things and happy people are reading. I'm still chuckling a little bit. I went to a panel on Book Talk at Printers Row Lit Fest in Chicago 2021 now, like years ago. Like it was such a good programming inclusion in the lineup in terms of like bringing in new audiences to that fest. I was so proud of like the like young board member or whatever that brought that on. It was great. And it was very interesting because at the time I wasn't even on TikTok. And I mean, I'm not creating on TikTok, but I wasn't consuming either. I was just very interested in it and the conversations that were happening around it. And it was very interesting because I was hearing like them talking about what they considered book talk books at the time, like the OG book talk books. which they absolutely put back on the bestseller list. But back, like, these were all books that when I was a bookseller were on the bestseller lists. Um, and so I found that very interesting. That very different now, right? They are very much being given a lot of power, or the platform is being given a lot of power in publishing in a way that I probably should sit down and articulate my thoughts better on, in a way that we haven't seen them adapt to other platforms that quickly either. Oh, we got another siren. Sorry, Ashley. Look. Okay, back. Yeah, I think a lot of us are on the same page here. Like like I'm not begrudging, and that there's a lot of things I really like, but there's a lot of things right now like where and it's probably always been this way, and I'm just romanticizing and only remembering what I like really stood out to me. But I'm not feeling like the romance is tailored to me in a way that I used to feel like it was, or that it doesn't feel. And this is another thing is okay, sorry. Um, all my tangents. You're gonna get all of my tangents. We are seeing less investment in romance or books in general by an overworked publishing industry, by which I mean like the actual people working, not like the court, like the you know what I mean. Um, so they're like picking up from self-pub, which I'm not as familiar with because it can be so hit and miss, to be completely honest, but everything can. I know. I'm not speaking down on self-pub by any means, to be clear. But now we're pulling from self-pub and we almost are expecting things to be in its final form, and then no one is putting in the editing energy to get it to a more polished final form, and we're missing a lot of what I personally had come to expect in romances. And that could just be my own expectation and needing to adapt and change. I became very used to kind of like the Avon format of things. I don't know. We love that. I'm that book fan that still shows up for authors panels and has my favorite local website and bookstore. Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing I do love is as messy as some of these like conventions have been, and I haven't really like jumped on in a way that would be fun. Like I would love to like go hang out with other readers and whatnot. Um, but we're seeing a lot of ground support for authors from fans, which is really nice too. Yeah, I feel like I'd probably be in the same boat with you, Ashley. Basically, what I'm saying is that the most common question I get asked is, "Have you read this?" And I hate that I usually have to answer, "No, not yet. The TBR is too damn high." Absolutely. My TBR is 3 years backlisted. You're not completely writing off your entire TBR. Yeah. Case in point, Iron Flame had formatting issues because they had to print so many to keep up with demand. They probably also had formatting issues because they rushed it. um, but I think you're talking about print errors, right? Most of the books had issues, yeah, and had chapters switched around, yeah. Um, yeah, I had someone return, which I'm sure is much more frequent now. Once we came back with a book that it had midway through the book, it just switched. Somehow the pages had gotten flopped. You know, the bundles had gotten switched, and she had the second half of another book. She was like, "Can I have the end of the book?" And we're like, "Yeah, go switch it out." You are allowed to know how this ends. Yeah, Avon was one of the greatest of historical romances. Yes. And I've been really struggling recently because I feel like they're slowing down. And I feel like this was, sorry, making a visual note of a candle I've got burning. It is my steamy romance novel candle from Frostbeard Candles. I thought it was appropriate. The new Sarah MacLean The Duchess's book is getting moved back for like a thriller-esque romance, which I don't begrudge. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna read it. Um, and it made me think of Jane Ann Krentz versus Amanda Quick. Like I think that makes sense. I can see the vision, but it also made me wonder, is the market for historical romance slowing down? And does she see an opportunity there to explore something she's clearly already interested in, especially with the direction we've seen um, the current series going, Hell's Bells? Yes, some books just need better editors. Christy, that is the distillation of all of my thoughts. Yes, thank you. Indie published and traditionally published. The end. Yes. That's it. We just need to invest in editors. And investing in editors is respecting their work-life balance and having a full staff so they actually have the time to edit books, and recognizing that what they do is valid and important, and they're partners with the author. And I don't even know how that full relationship works, but I know they have more, like as a dramaturg, I know what that partnership looks like, and we have much less like power than an editor does, right? I mean, we're usually just posing questions. The author or the playwright has all power, which I mean the author still does, but there's a little bit more at play there, to my understanding. That's a good way to do it, Catherine. I have no list. I look into it, and then I read it. If I like it, I'll check out the author's other works. I just have like a pile of shame that sits on my bookshelf. There's a reason you don't generally see my active in use bookshelves, because they are usually stacked up with books I have purchased and or my current library checkouts that are more than they should be, but I am allowed to have all of them. So, and I take them back when they are asked for them back. And then it's based on mood. And I try and read for Feature Fridays. And then sometimes I accidentally fall into reading slows. At my store, we try to order Avon from HarperCollins. It is automatically listed as back order with no expected date to be had. We had to scramble to get them from other vendors. That is a fantastic insight, because I like anecdotally, even to indies that have expanded out their romance section, I haven't seen Avon titles, and even a bookstore that added like a mass market spinner at one point got rid of the spinner, at least by this indie bookstore day. And they put what they had in section, but they hadn't been reordering the Avon titles, and it made me really sad. And that's some excellent insight into why that might be happening. Yes. Okay. The Love Amanda Quick. I need to reread the Arcane. I haven't kept up with her more recent stuff, but I loved the Arcane Society books when I was younger. Yeah. Editors are needed. People need to understand that. The industry needs to remember that. Yeah. And I think the Amazon model has really done a disservice to the entire industry, because it's pushed authors to publish at a rate that is unsustainable for most people's creative process in order to feed the algorithm. And then it is training readers to expect that to be the pace, to the point where, like, could we still have I have personally explained the process to you, Deborah, conversation today? I don't know, because a one book a year pub schedule isn't the expectation anymore for a lot of authors. And then that has bled into traditional publishing as well. So I'm not begrudging people that can put out more than one book a year. Absolutely not. But I'm seeing a lot of people putting out more than one book a year, which really makes me afraid for the necessity of that for their own careers. Yeah. I think based on the points you brought up, Ashley, I also think you would make a great book editor. Although I used to think I wanted to be involved in that world too, and it just seems like in the same way that, like, the theater world, I became a little disillusioned to a certain point too, right? In any creative endeavor that people have a lot of passion about, it is easy to exploit that passion and not frame it as work when it's still work, and that's how you get burnout. That's the way. I went to Target one time and looked at the romance section, shook my head, and ordered from my library. I support libraries. If you have the funds, I support buying, but I really like buying it into your library. That's top tier because then other people can discover it too. Customers don't want to pull books from stacks if it can be avoided, I find. They want the spines out or faced out. That's what they grab. That's a good point. I'm trying to think of like, oh, okay. The stacks. I got you. I got you. I was like, how do we merchandise in stacks? Takes me a second sometimes. I am the person that will dig through the whole stack to find the most pristine copy. I will put them all back neatly, but I am that person. I will admit it. I do the same with face outs. I will go through the whole entire face out section and find the one. I'm getting better at it, but like when you're spending a lot on a book. Yeah, that's interesting. It's also interesting. That makes me think of the cursed Amazon bookstores. They entered the market at a time I was a bookseller, and I am in Chicago. There was a bookstore, and I was expecting it to be a major competitor, and like I was a little bit afraid of it. And I went into that store, and I have never been so uninspired in a bookstore in my entire life, because their whole shtick was that everything was faced out. If you never went into one, because there weren't a whole lot of them, thank goodness. But they only had so much space because of that. And I don't remember how many titles they generally carry, but it was all algorithm based. So like the best of the best. So it was essentially kind of like an airport bookstore in terms of like selection. And I remember going into the children's section because that's where I could kind of like gauge myself the easiest. And do you know like the easy reader, like floppy books? They're not like chapter books, but they're also not fully picture books. And they usually have like the levels at the top. There's always ones on like sharks and like manatees, because manatees are my favorite. Or, like popular characters. And they had all of those faced out as like separate titles, where in other bookstores you might see those in like a waterfall display where they're kind of all like against each other. And I was like, oh, this is the selection we're dealing with. Or they only had like 2 in a series. Oh, okay. Luckily, we sell new and used, so we have tons of used copies, but we have so many, we had to stack them, and it slowed sales down at our store. That's fascinating, yeah. Nope, I grabbed it off the top of the stack. It was a very clean stack, though, because I went shopping on an indie bookstore day. Maybe I'll get the video for that out or not. I don't think it's as exciting as last year. But I went into a used bookstore in the city that was participating. Okay, I see now. Those two thoughts combined. I got you. Yeah, it's a catch-22. We want to have them, but then they don't sell because we have so many of them. We've tried sales on the section, all sorts of things, just tons of stacks. Yeah. Oh. Well, this has been a great conversation, but I just looked at the time. And I don't know if I still have quiet hours. I'm not going to lie to you. So, this may be our final thoughts section, and we can continue these these kinds of conversations both when we talk about season 3 together and if we do more read-alongs together as well, potentially. Ooh, that's so fun. We're doing a statewide indie bookstore tour in my state, still ongoing. We have maps. That's so fun. Okay, so I'm in Chicago, and every year for Indie Bookstore Day, there is a bookstore crawl where historically we've gotten passports. This year they did it as paper sheets that had spots for a max of 15 spots, because the deal is if you go to 15 or 10 stores, you get 10% off at all participating stores all year, 15% at 50 if you go to 15 stores. And last year they ran out so early because turnout was so much better than they expected. And this year, I think it was even better than last year. And so they switched to like sheets that they got some of it every store, but then they could print out more if they needed to. So that was really smart. And it's so much fun. I love it so much. Good night. Thank you for being here. As usual, Christy. You're in Indiana, Ashley. Do we know each other? It's one of my dreams to go up to Chicago for that. I've heard very good things. Yes. Yeah, I'm a native Hoosier. Indie Bookstore Day is always the last Saturday of April. Took my brain a second to catch up. So check with your local indie at around April. Sorry, I guess I should have clued everybody in on that, because it's one of my favorite days of the year. And different stores do different things. Like some locations will team up. But I've heard of other, like Ashley talking about her state doing the tour. I've heard of like states or cities doing that independently or outside of Indie Bookstore Day too. Clearly in this instance, so it's worth keeping your eye out on, because they're always a lot of fun, I think. But what do I know? Alrighty. Any final? My motto is, if we don't have it, the other indies probably do. Yes. And there's been a lot of growth in indies that I've seen anecdotally in Indiana, since I am both nearby and from Indiana originally. So that's exciting. All right. Any other final wrap-up thoughts? I guess game plan again for what we're looking at. We get Bridgerton season 3 this week. I will get a reaction video up as soon as I can. Maybe by the end of the weekend, next weekend. I can't make too concrete of promises. And then from there, we will potentially do lives in some configuration so we can all chat about everything together, kind of, have fun together, whether we want to do that episode by episode, where we have a live a week until season 2 drops, or part 2 drops. If we want to do it more in one bunch, chime in on your thoughts, but all are options. Potentially. I think I have the time for that. And then, did I have other thoughts there? We can talk about, or you can let me know if you're interested in trying to do more read-alongs together in some configuration. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, Ashley. Yeah, I was like, in theory, it would be nice to get that granular, but there's no way we're not gonna, like, I know how tangent-y my brain gets, so we'll do some. I have in the description box charities. So I have the Palestine Relief charity that Nicola has linked on her Instagram, and I have the Gaza Evacuation Book Fund auction for anyone interested. There are some romance titles in there, including historical romance, and their Instagram has a breakdown of some of the historical romance goodies or things up for auction, including there is a conversation with Eva Lee, which I thought looked pretty sweet. I don't know what the bidding of that is up to though. So I think that's what I've got there. Did I have anything else? Did we have any other business that we needed to touch base about? I don't know. But I've now kept you longer than even I said I was going to. So this has been a lot of fun. I thank you all for being here, whether now or later. And yeah, let me know. Feel free to drop in the comments after the live stream too, if you have other thoughts that pop up. I'll be around. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. See everybody on the other side of Bridgerton season 3, part 3. How exciting. We're so close, friends. Thank you. Thank you. See you on the other side. Ah, yay. All right. Have a good night, everybody.